The life of a ninja beginning in the Hidden Mist Village. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 301 Calculation. Nana Qishuang, who also returned home with a full load, fell into a deep sleep with satisfaction. When he woke up again, it was noon the next day. He stretched in bed and then slowly got up. Looking around, he muttered to himself, the tickets to go there are ready, and I should also prepare appropriately. It's time to set off. He was going to a place to seek one of the strongest powers in the world. Looking at the entire ninja world, the most powerful are the ancestor of chakra, Otsutsuki Kaguya, and the Six Paths Sage, Otsutsuki Hagoromo. The two of them represent the two strongest powers in the world, the bloodline network and the power of the sage. The strength of Kaguya is fundamentally based on the mastery of the 7 basic nature changes, which are integrated to form the bloodline network. The huge amount of chakra is secondary. Because the bloodline network contains 7 nature changes, all escape techniques related to the 7 attributes have no effect on her. And her bloodline net, which combines 7 basic changes, also has unparalleled destructive power, which can almost annihilate everything. This can be seen from the dust escape in Noka's hands. You know, dust escape is just a jutsu that combines the 3 changes of wind, fire, and earth, and it has a great power that is unmatched in the world. The bloodline net, which combines 7 nature changes, should be understood. Even if you use your toes to think, its destructive power is naturally terrifying to the extreme. With the help of a huge amount of chakra, the goddess of the rabbit was born. If there is no bloodline net, Kaguya Tsutsuki is just a woman with an exaggerated amount of chakra, no different from an oversized tailed beast, and her invincible defense and invincible destructive power do not exist at all. In this case, if everyone fights with her, even if the total amount of chakra is not as good as hers, they will not be defeated and have no power to fight back. In the final analysis, it is still because of the bloodline net. Theoretically, anyone has the possibility of fusing multiple chakra changes and cultivating the bloodline network, but the more time it takes to learn the changes in chakra properties, the more time it takes. In addition, the fusion changes are also very difficult, so the possibility of practicing the bloodline network is actually close to 0. Therefore, Qishuang did not dare to ask for the power of the bloodline network. What he was going to seek was the power of the sage. Although the 6 Paths Sage Otsutsuki Hagoromo later mastered the power of the bloodline network, it was after he sealed his mother and became the 10 Tails Jinkriki. Before that, he did not have the power of the bloodline network. He and his brother Hamura were able to defeat and seal his mother, relying on the power he obtained from the young big-toed sage, the power of the sage. With the power of the sage, he broke the absolute defense of his mother's bloodline network and blocked the invincible destruction of his mother's bloodline network. This ended the rule of his mother, the goddess of the rabbit. The power of the sage technique can be seen. In this world, there are 3 places where immortal arts are passed down, namely, Maiboki Mountain, Ryochi Cave, and Wetbone Forest. If ordinary people want to practice immortal arts, they can go to these 3 places of inheritance to seek opportunities. Through the guidance of the immortals in the 3 places of inheritance, they can obtain the power of immortals. Of course, they can also choose to comprehend and obtain the power of immortals by themselves. After all, the so-called power of immortals is essentially to control natural energy. Natural energy is everywhere. In theory, anyone can try to practice anywhere. But in fact, because the chakra that ordinary people are used to using comes from their own biological energy, it is very different from the natural energy of the outside world. This also leads to the fact that, even if they are surrounded by natural energy, ordinary people can't feel the existence of natural energy at all. If they can't feel the existence of natural energy, if ordinary people want to comprehend immortal arts by themselves, it means that they can't even touch the threshold. Unless they are like the first generation Hokage Senju Hashirama and the child of JGO, they have a physique that is naturally friendly to natural energy, which is the so-called immortal body. Otherwise, comprehending immortal arts by themselves is a joke for ordinary people. In his early years, Nana Frost had tried to feel the existence of natural energy, but he failed. He did not have the kind of physique that was naturally friendly to natural energy. Therefore, if he wanted to practice the power of immortal arts, he could only go to the 3 major immortal places to seek guidance from the immortals. Among the 3 major immortal places, Myaboki Mountain, where the Toad clan is located, is a party with a strong sense of justice, and it is naturally not so casual to teach immortal arts. Nana Frost thinks that he is not a bad person, but he is definitely not a good person. The Toad clan probably looks down on him. Jiraiya, one of the 3 ninjas of Konoha, also knows the immortal arts of the Toad clan, but Nana Frost, as a Kirigakure ninja, obviously cannot get guidance from Jiraiya to practice immortal arts. Moreover, Jiraiya himself is a man with a strong sense of justice and responsibility. If he goes to someone's house to plot against his immortal arts, I'm afraid that there is no way to end it peacefully. Not only that, Jiraiya left Konoha village after the last war and traveled around the continent, and no one knew his whereabouts. Nana Frost could not get the opportunity to go to Myaboki Mountain from him. The magic of Myaboki Mountain is out of his reach. Among the 3 ninjas, Princess Tsunade has a spiritual contract with the slug, and the slug is the incarnation of the slug sage in the wet bone forest. If he can find Princess Tsunade, he will naturally have the opportunity to go to the wet bone forest. But like Jiraiya, Princess Tsunade's whereabouts are also uncertain, and she belongs to a different camp, so the magic of the wet bone forest is out of his reach. The last immortal place to inherit is the Ryochi Cave. As far as he knows, the Ryochi Cave is different from the Myaboki Mountain with a sense of justice. Instead, it is a slightly evil place. The White Snake Sage will test all those who enter the Ryochi Cave. Regardless of good or evil, as long as they can pass the test, they will have the opportunity to practice magic. If Qishuang goes there, he naturally doesn't have to worry that the White Snake Sage will directly reject him. He just needs to seriously pass the test set by the White Snake Sage. As for whether the test will fail, he also has such concerns. But there has never been a smooth and risk-free beauty in the world. If you want to get it, you naturally need to pay. Just like the bloodline elimination that Ming was pursuing, she has been bearing the risk of being backlashed by the 3 forces. If Qishuang wants to obtain the power of the immortal, she must bear the corresponding risks. He can't escape. As for the opportunity to go to the Ryochi Cave, he has already got it. Orochimaru, one of the 3 ninjas, has the spiritual contract of 10,000 snakes, and 10,000 snakes come from the Ryochi Cave. He is the leader of the spiritual snake tribe in the Ryochi Cave. On the night when Qishuang met Orochimaru, she took the lead in taking off the other's heart. In addition to the purpose of deterring the other party, it was also to obtain the other party's blood sample. Just use the other party's blood to summon 10,000 snakes, and the way to the Ryochi Cave will naturally open. When the 3 ninjas met for the first time, Orochimaru's hands were disabled, and Kabuto used Orochimaru's blood to help summon 10,000 snakes. So, don't doubt the feasibility of this operation. Chapter 302 Farewell, Part 1. After thinking for a long time, Qishuang slowly got out of bed. After washing up, he began to pack his luggage. Longdi Cave is not an ordinary place. Even in the stories of the previous life, there are few records of it. It is only known that it is a kingdom dominated by the Psychic Snake clan, where the White Snake Fairy lives. As long as you pass the fairy's test, you can obtain the qualification to practice fairy arts. For such an unknown place, he naturally has to make adequate preparations and try to reduce the risks he has to face. Whether it is weapons and equipment or food supplies, they must be prepared carefully. Fortunately, this world has convenient ninja tools such as sealing scrolls. Otherwise, he really can't bring much things alone. Unfortunately, the development of ninja tools in the entire ninja world is still at a very low level. Or in other words, everyone prefers to develop their own potential and is extremely averse to using ninja tools to take shortcuts. As a result, the entire ninja world is not very active in the development of ninja tools. Storage tools like sealing scrolls, if developed normally, will definitely become smaller and more convenient, and become a variety of small storage ninja tools. How could it be like this now, with this paper scroll form still in use for hundreds of years? After some preparation, Qishuang sealed various weapons and equipment in one scroll, and sealed food supplies in another scroll. Although it is a bit troublesome to use them by making hand seals, and it is not as easy to use as Uchiha-Obito's main Jiki Sharingan, it is better than having no use. Countless weapons and equipment and food supplies were sealed into small scrolls, which greatly reduced his load, which was quite good. Most of the weapons and equipment can be recycled and used continuously, but food supplies cannot. If you use a little bit, you have to prepare more. Looking at the two scrolls in his hand, Qishuang thought secretly. Then, he took the food scroll out and prepared to purchase some more food supplies. After half an hour of shopping, he bought nearly half a year's worth of food. Anyway, the sealed space is isolated from the outside world, so there is no need to worry about food spoilage, so he prepared as much as possible. Although the people in the market were all secretly amazed when they saw him use the sealing scroll to store so much food, no one dared to ask more questions. After all, he was a Miss Ninja. After preparing the supplies, Qishuang followed the central avenue to the Mizukage building. After finding King again, he secretly pulled him aside. "What do you want this time?" Looking at the boy in front of him, the man with the eye mask asked helplessly. He was used to Qishuang finding him again and again, and doing things that abused his power for personal gain. "Captain, I want to ask for leave and go on a long journey," Qishuang said in a low voice. "Leave?" King looked at him in surprise and asked, "How long will you be out?" It was just a leave, not a big problem, and it was still within his authority. He liked Qishuang for this, knowing how to measure. He knew how to use resources flexibly, and would not deliberately embarrass him. As short as 2 or 3 months, as long as a year and a half. Qishuang scratched his head and said embarrassedly, "If he passes the test of the White Snake Immortal, he will be able to practice the immortal art." After all, it took Uzumaki Naruto less than a month to practice the Toad immortal art. He thought that his talent was no worse than that stupid boy, and a year was plenty of time. "Your vacation is a bit long." King sighed and continued, "Can you tell me what you are going to do this time?" Qishuang shook her head and said softly, "Not this time." He didn't want to tell anyone about going to the Dragon Cave, especially Ming. Because the Dragon Cave was too mysterious, he didn't know if he could come back safely. If Ming knew, he would definitely pester him to go with him. It was such a dangerous place, so he had better go alone. As if he heard the crisis hidden in the boy's words, King frowned and said, "Can I not go? I have to go." Qishuang sighed helplessly, looking at the ceiling, feeling a little heavy. He didn't know when Uchiha-Obito would come, but he knew that the peace of the Hidden Mist village would not last long. In order to expel Uchiha-Obito, to jump out of this chessboard and become a chess player on the other side, he needs the power of a sage. Only the power of a sage can give him the qualification to turn the gears of fate. Otherwise, he will become an insignificant soldier on the battlefield like the Third Ninja World War, floating with the tide and unable to grasp his own future. If he is not careful, he will be beaten to death on the beach by the waves of war. Well, be careful. Seeing that he had made up his mind, King did not continue to dissuade him. The little boy has grown up and has his own ideas. As a senior, all he can do is to help as much as possible, rather than forcibly guide him. "Thank you, Captain." Hearing King's promise, Qishuang finally breathed a sigh of relief. Otherwise, he would have to let himself disappear. Then, "I won't disturb you from work, goodbye." Qishuang waved goodbye. "Be careful yourself," King reminded again. "Well, I know." Watching the figure of the boy disappear in the corridor, King rubbed his forehead and returned to his desk. Because of the fourth Hokage's playfulness, several of his assistants had to help share the official duties. At this moment, there were still more than a dozen documents that had not been reviewed. They were almost exhausted. After leaving the Mizukage building, Qishuang came to the practice field where he and Ming often practiced. Before he walked in, he saw a girl waving at him excitedly from a distance. "Why are you so late today? Come here, I have a surprise for you." Surprise? Hearing this, Qishuang was a little confused. Despite this, he still quickened his pace and rushed over. Look. Meditarumi spread out her 2 white palms with several scars. Then, Qishuang noticed 2 more chakra fluctuations in her 2 palms. There was a warm breath in her left palm, which should be the fire attribute chakra. There was a familiar moist breath in her right palm, which must be the water attribute chakra. Then, he saw Meditarumi slowly bring her 2 palms together, and then the warm and moist breath blended together very naturally, turning into a strange and extremely aggressive breath. It was a kind of chakra he had never seen on Medi. Have you mastered the Kekoi Genkai of boiling release? He looked at the girl strangely. The combination of water and fire chakras into a new chakra is the Kekoi Genkai, boiling release. Today's Medi, with Kekoi Genkais, is more and more like the woman in his memory. It's just that I don't know if Medi can take another step under his inspiration and master the second Kekoi Genkai in the world. Chapter 303 Farewell, Part 2. Not noticing the strange look on his face, Meditarumi fiddled with the cloud of gas transformed from boiling chakra in her hand and said happily, "This morning, I came here to conduct the fusion experiment as usual. I don't know why, but the rhythm of the experiment today was very smooth, and there were no conflicts. When I came to my senses, the water and fire chakras had formed a new stable structure. Then, I spent a lot of time to grasp the feeling of balancing the water and fire chakras. In the end, it became what you see now." After saying that, she slowly lifted the cloud of gas and blew gently on it. Then she saw the cloud of gas slowly sweeping across the ground, making a slight hissing sound. When the mist dispersed, Qishuang clearly saw a layer of paste-like substance left on the ground, where the cloud of gas swept. He squatted down, took out a kunai, and poked it gently. Click. The paste-like substance shattered immediately, and he finally understood that it was a layer of glass formed by melting sand. How is it? Isn't this new power interesting? The girl bent down and asked very proudly, with a smile on her face that looked forward to being praised. Seeing her thoughts, Qishuang stood up and praised generously. This is a very dangerous bloodline limit, and its corrosive power may be stronger than your original dissolution escape. Hearing this, Terumi's pretty face smiled even more brightly. Several years of hard work have finally paid off, and finally there is a rich harvest. Although there is still a long way to go to her ultimate goal, at least she has understood that this path of fusion is not wrong. It does exist. Qishuang continued, "Now, you already have the dissolving escape technique that combines water and earth, and the boiling escape technique that combines water and fire. Both escape techniques include the nature change of water escape technique. If you use water escape technique as a bridge to connect the nature change of earth escape technique and fire escape technique, it will surely be much easier than fusing the 3 changes out of thin air." Terumi nodded, her brows still filled with joy, and said proudly, "My idea is similar to yours. I plan to use the foundation of boiling escape technique and dissolving escape technique to fuse the nature change of earth escape technique and fire escape technique with water escape technique as a center. In this way, I have the hope of cultivating the bloodline and eliminating it. By the way, why are you so late today?" she asked Qishuang curiously. Recently, their team has not received any tasks. As usual, whenever they have nothing to do, they will come here early to practice or exchange their ideas. Although they may come a little late occasionally, they will not come as late as today. Now, it's even past lunchtime. Qishuang said with a smile. "I overslept today, packed my luggage for a while, and asked the captain for a long vacation, so I came a little late." Luggage, leave. The girl frowned slightly and asked tentatively, "Are you going on a long trip?" "Yes. To a very far place," Qishuang said lightly, not wanting to make her worry too much. "Then, when will you come back?" Meditarumi lowered her head, poked the sand on the ground with her toes, and asked softly, "At the shortest, 2 or 3 months. At the longest, a year and a half." Qishuang said with a smile. "So long?" Meditarumi looked up in surprise, thought for a moment, pouted and said, "Then I want to go with you too." Qishuang waved her hand and said with a wry smile, "You have just mastered the boiling release. Why don't you strike while the iron is hot and study the fusion of bloodline elimination? Besides, I'm not going out to play. I'm going to do a private matter. If you go, it will be inconvenient for me to move. So, you'd better not go. Just stay in the village and study bloodline elimination." He had expected Ming to have such an idea, and he was worried that he couldn't find a reason to persuade him. Now that the other party has just mastered the boiling release and is in high spirits, it is just the right reason to let him stay in the village and concentrate on studying bloodline elimination. As he expected, after hearing this, Terumi showed hesitation. After struggling in her heart, she said helplessly, "Okay then. Be careful. Remember to come back early." The great joy of having just mastered the boiling escape technique was still washing over her heart. She wanted to go one step further, integrate the 3 chakra changes, and achieve bloodline elimination. By the way, don't get involved in the affairs of the reformists and conservatives. Qishuang solemnly warned the girl. Ever since she had the idea of reform, Mei had secretly joined the reformist camp. However, she was now a girl of 16 or 17 years old, without power or influence. She was just an insignificant role in the reformist camp, not enough to reach the core position. Qishuang turned a blind eye and did not intervene too much. Now, he was ready to leave, and Uchiha was about to arrive, and the Hidden Mist village was about to undergo a major change. Without his care, if Mei continued to get involved in these things, her situation would only become more dangerous. Terumi wrinkled her nose and said dissatisfiedly, "The 3 families of the Wind Clan, the Snow Clan, and the Kaguya Clan have been destroyed. The situation in the Hidden Mist village has become extremely bad. Reform is the general trend. Only with reform can the Hidden Mist village have a future. I hope that through reform, the Hidden Mist village will become stronger, so that all children can grow up without worries, all the elderly can spend their old age in peace, and all the people will no longer be displaced and hungry." Hearing this, Qishuang sighed and said helplessly, "I know that reform is the general trend, but reform requires strength as a foundation. Reform without the support of strong power will only become a failed coup. Just like the Wind Clan and the Snow Clan ended up like that." As he said, he clasped the girl's shoulders tightly, stared into her eyes, and said seriously, "The power of language is too powerful after all. It cannot change the world and reverse the destiny. No matter how harmonious the reformers and conservatives are in communication at the table, they will eventually inevitably overturn the table and fight. Only the victorious side is qualified to dominate everything. To win, you must have absolute power. And what you should do most now is not to work on those trivial matters for the reformists, but to study your bloodline elimination. Once you succeed, you will have the power to control the entire battle situation. Do you understand?" Avoiding his sword-like gaze, Terumi Mei opened the 2 hands on her shoulders and said impatiently, okay, I know. She is no longer the little girl who knew nothing back then, and of course she understands the meaning of Qishuang's words. Only power has the real right to speak. The weak are not qualified to reform. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 304 Departure. Seeing the girl agreed, Qishuang breathed a sigh of relief. Then, he spread out his right hand, gathered the chakra in his palm, and transformed the nature of ice. With the cold air curling, Terumi Mei saw that there was an ice cube slowly condensing in his palm. She didn't know what Qishuang was going to do, but she found that Qishuang was particularly attentive this time. The ice cubes that could be condensed and transformed at will on weekdays condensed very slowly today. The soybean-sized ice cube slowly expanded and finally turned into an egg-sized ice ball. "Why did you make such an ice ball?" Terumi Mei pointed at the ice cube in his hand and asked with a smile. Qishuang didn't answer, still focusing on the palm of his right hand, continuing to infuse his chakra into the ice cube and curbing the growth of the ice ball. Feeling that the chakra he compressed and injected had reached its limit, he stopped the infusion of chakra. "Open." With a light shout, he concentrated his mental power to control the chakra in the ice ball to further change. Then, Terumi saw a crack on the top of the ice ball, which quickly spread outwards and covered the entire ice ball in the blink of an eye. Then, with the top crack as a center, the ice layer on the surface of the ice ball slowly peeled out, layer by layer, like a blooming flower. When the ice ball was completely peeled off, and the chakra contained in it was completely stabilized, Qishuang shook it gently again, and countless pieces of ice fell from the uneven, overlapping ice layers. A white snow lotus with distinct petals appeared in his palm. So beautiful. Staring at the snow lotus with shining eyes, Terumi was overjoyed and said, "When did you master such a delicate manipulation technique? The more subtle the change, the more it can reflect a person's chakra manipulation level." She sighed that the fine manipulation technique contained in the solidified ice block, which changed like a blooming flower, and finally formed such a delicate snow lotus, was beyond her reach. Qishuang smiled bitterly and sighed, "If you are like me, and focus your energy on studying a single escape technique, you can also master this manipulation technique." After a long period of practice, he was extremely proficient in the manipulation of ice escape chakra, which allowed him to perform such an amazing operation. Terumi shook her head and said helplessly, "I still have chakra fusion experiments to do. How can I have so much time? By the way, are you going to give me this snow lotus?" As she said that, she raised her head and looked at the boy eagerly, putting the snow lotus, which was only the size of an egg, into her hand. Qishuang sighed, "If not for you, who else can I give it to? When I'm not around, use it to accompany you. I compressed a lot of chakra in it, which should be enough to support me until I come back. When you're free, you can also use it to cool drinks and have a cold drink anytime, anywhere." As he said that, he blinked at the girl. Terumi couldn't hold it back any longer and laughed out loud. Okay, I'll use it to cool drinks." Seeing the girl's happy look, Qishuang continued, "If one day you find it broken, what will happen?" The laughter stopped abruptly, and Terumi's heart skipped a beat. Looking at her slightly worried eyes, Qishuang thought for a while, smiled and said, "That means I'm back. Asshole, you scared me." Hearing this answer, Terumi was relieved and kicked him angrily. She didn't know that the snow lotus was actually another form of Qishuang's ice clone. To compress an ice block the size of her body into the size of an egg, Qishuang naturally needs to spend a lot of energy to do it. And the ice clone that changed into the form of a snow lotus naturally lost the mobility of an ordinary clone. Now, it is an ice sculpture of a snow lotus. Forming, it may be just an ordinary companion toy, but for Qishuang, it is actually a treasure that reflects his life and death. Based on the nature of the clone's dependence on the original body, if he died in Langdi Cave, the snow lotus would naturally break. But he still didn't dare to say this to Ming. "Okay, you practice slowly here, don't forget what I said. Today, I won't accompany you. I have to go back to prepare." After giving the girl another instruction, Qishuang turned and left. "Then remember to come back early." Terumi waved and shouted, "Okay, got it." Soon, Terumi saw the familiar figure disappear in the training ground. After returning home, Qishuang checked his luggage again, and then went out. Although he told Terumi that he would leave tomorrow morning, it was just false information he deliberately used to paralyze the other party. Although he temporarily appeased Ming, he couldn't guarantee that when he left tomorrow morning, Ming would block him at the entrance of the village and pester him to go out together. In order to prevent the night from being long and dreaming, it is better to leave early. By then, even if Ming suddenly changed his mind, it would be too late to chase him. Not long after, he arrived at the entrance of the village. "Are you leaving the village, sir?" "Yes. I'm going out to do something." After exchanging a few pleasantries with the mist ninja on duty at the entrance of the village, Qishuang slowly walked out of the hidden mist village. When the hidden mist village completely disappeared from his sight, he immediately left the main road and turned into the woods next to it. While erasing his footprints, he quickly rushed to the beach. There was plenty of moisture there, which was very suitable for performing ice escape, and there were few people, so no one would see him. Not long after, the sound of the surging waves lingered in his ears. He accelerated forward for more than 200 meters, passed through the woods, and a blue sea appeared in front of him. Ice escape clone technique. After finding a cool place, Qishuang turned his chakra into wisps of cold air that seeped out of his body surface, and then gathered the cold air to condense a clone next to him. Then, he sat down cross-legged again, resting while refining chakra. He had to adjust his condition to the best to deal with the 10,000 snakes that were about to be summoned. As for the ice clone, He stood quietly by the side, slowly formed a group of hand seals, and then gathered chakra into his mouth. After about half an hour, Qishuang finally eliminated the fatigue of the journey and made up for the loss of using the clone technique. Almost done. After a glance around and finding no strangers, he took out a sealing scroll from his pocket. Release. After a dazzling change of hand seals, he took out a frozen heart from the sealing scroll. It was the heart that Orochimaru had taken off by him that night. "Dude, are you ready?" he asked the clone beside him while holding the frozen heart. The ice clone raised his head, his cheeks slightly bulged, as if he was holding something. He did not answer, but just nodded gently to indicate that he was ready. Then, Qishuang removed the ice covering the surface of Orochimaru's heart, took some blood, froze it again, and sealed it back into the scroll. Then, he used Orochimaru's blood to draw a blood mark on the palm of his left hand, and quickly formed a set of hand seals. That was the summoning technique's summoning hand seal that he had practiced countless times. Then he gathered chakra in the palm of his hand and pressed it on the beach. Summoning technique. This operation of stealing someone's blood to summon someone else's summon beast is actually very dangerous. If you get a summon beast with a good temper, it may not be a big deal. But if you encounter a snake like Mandibu that even Orochimaru doesn't give face to, then. Chapter 305 Arrival. The black rune formation opened under Qishuang's palm and spread around the beach. As the white smoke rose, he felt something suddenly appear under his feet. He and his clone had left the ground and were lifted up by a mountain-like figure. The smoke dispersed, and when he looked carefully, he saw that the two were standing on the head of a purple snake. It had sharp horns on its head and black rings. Each scale on its body was the size of Qishuang's palm. It was a very huge summoning snake. It was roughly estimated that its body length was at least 50 meters. This was the leader of the Longdi Cave summoning snake clan, Wansh. Wansh rolled his eyes slightly, focused his eyes on the top of his head, looked at the two people above him and said, "Little ghost, what right do you have to stand on my head? Where is that bastard Orochimaru? I smell his scent. Why can't I see him?" It was taking a nap in Longdi Cave and was suddenly summoned to the ninja continent by a summoning contract. It felt quite irritated. It clearly sensed that it was Orochimaru's summoning contract that summoned it here, and it also smelled Orochimaru's scent, but for some reason, it didn't see Orochimaru's figure. What made it even more irritated was that there was actually a strange boy standing on its head. It never remembered that it had signed a summoning contract with such a boy. Qishuang smiled slightly and said with a curled mouth, "I secretly summoned you with Orochimaru's blood. Of course he is not here." At the same time, the clone next to him also launched the spell at the moment when Wansh appeared. Ice release. Momentary fragrance. The clone opened its mouth and sprayed out a thick white frost, which quickly spread to the surroundings. Unexpectedly, he suddenly attacked. Before Wansh could react, the white frost had completely submerged its head, and half of its body disappeared in the white frost. After performing this ninjutsu, Qishuang's ice clone completely dissipated into the air. The chakra consumption of momentary beauty was extremely high. In order to freeze a guy as big as Wansh, the clone did not dare to hold back, so it exhausted its chakra. At the same time, an extremely cold breath passed through Wansh's nasal cavity and tongue, eroding its entire body, making it shiver. "Asshole. I'm going to eat you." Damned little devil is a psychic snake. Although it is different from ordinary creatures, it still has the common nature of snake creatures' cold blood. It likes dark and humid places, but hates cold, because coldness will greatly reduce its body activity. Therefore, after being attacked by Qishuang and eroded by this cold breath, it felt extremely angry. But Wansh in the white frost roared loudly, and then suddenly there was no sound, just stiffly standing there, motionless. "Idiot." Qishuang looked at it with great disdain, and then quickly got into the snake's mouth. Spiritual calling technique. Release. The moment he entered the snake's mouth, he released the summoning of the spiritual call. White smoke rose again, and the snake bodies on the beach, which were like a small mountain of thousands of snakes, suddenly disappeared. Nothing was left, except the huge mark left on the beach. No one knew that a huge monster had appeared here just now. On the other side, after saying goodbye to Qishuang, Terumi Mei thought about it, and began to waver again. That bastard. He dared to leave me alone in the village. It's too much. She chattered at the snow lotus in her hand, venting her dissatisfaction. Then, after a period of absent-minded fusion practice, she decided to go to Qishuang to talk again. Unfortunately, when she arrived at Qishuang's house, it was empty. Bastard. Until then, she didn't understand that the other party had told her earlier that they would leave early in the morning, but it was just a delaying tactic. She was originally in a state of confusion, and now that she saw Qishuang had left, she was even more determined to go out together. However, they had sneaked away in advance, leaving her no chance at all. In addition, Qishuang deliberately avoided her, so even if she wanted to catch up, it would be too late. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. She took out the beautiful snow lotus in her arms, raised it high, and was ready to smash it on the ground, but she couldn't bear to do it. Finally, she had to put it in her pocket again, and left Qishuang's residence angrily. In the smoke, Qishuang hid in the mouth of Wansh. She felt a flash in front of her eyes and a vibration under her feet. They had come to an extremely dark cave. It's better to say that it's an underground world than a cave, because the top of the cave is at least more than 30 meters above the ground. Even for a behemoth like Wansh, staying in this cave doesn't seem crowded at all, but very spacious. Langdi Cave has arrived. For him, there is no way to get to Langdi Cave more conveniently than using this method of removing the telepathic transfer. Just this one transfer saved him a lot of energy in traveling through mountains and rivers. Moreover, he did not know the location of the entrance to the Dragon Earth Cave, and he had no direction to travel through mountains and rivers. The snake must know, but with its arrogant personality, it was impossible for it to tell him. In addition, he used Orochimaru's blood to summon it, and as a stranger who had nothing to do with it, the snake would naturally not look good to him. More importantly, the snake itself was not a good thing. It was a big snake that would eat people. Even if Orochimaru, the master of the contract, wanted to summon it, he would need to prepare a living person as a sacrifice. He, a temporary summoner, could not summon such a fierce monster. It was simply courting death to ask the snake for the location of the entrance to the Dragon Earth Cave. Therefore, he came up with such a method of using the summoning technique to transfer directly to the Dragon Earth Cave. He did not dare to waste time. After successfully reaching the destination, he quickly jumped out of the stiff snake's mouth and fled. The duration of the momentary beauty will change according to the strength of the opponent. As a giant among summoned beasts, the Mangsh is as powerful as the legendary 3 ninjas. Last time, Orochimaru was hit by this move, and was paralyzed for about 7 seconds. This time, for its own safety, it tried to prolong the Mangsh's paralysis time as much as possible to give itself a chance to escape. The clone exerted its full strength, and its duration should be slightly longer than last time. About 10 seconds later, the Mangsh finally woke up. Just when it was about to flip the offending brat off its head and eat it, it found that its head was empty and there was no one. What surprised it even more was that it actually returned to the Ryochi cave. It had no idea what happened. In just a moment, it went from an unfamiliar beach to the Ryochi cave. If it weren't for the icy air that still remained in its body, it would even suspect that being summoned just now was just an illusion. Chapter 306. Attention. At this moment, the 10,000 snakes sensed a heat source that was moving away from it quickly with its thermal sense. Looking closely, it was the hateful little ghost that had just summoned and attacked it. I will definitely eat you alive. With a roar, the 10,000 snakes immediately chased after it. As for why it suddenly returned to the Langdi cave, and what happened just now, it no longer wanted to explore. At the moment, it just wanted to eat alive the little ghost who fooled the king of 10,000 snakes. At the same time, in the temple deep in the Langdi cave, the white snake immortal who was sleeping on the stone bed coiled opened his eyes again, looked towards the east with interest, and whispered, "Such an interesting human, but I haven't met it for a long time." Beside the stone bed, Ichikishimaheim, who looked like a little girl, smiled and looked up and asked, "White Snake Immortal, are there more humans coming in?" Because of the order issued by the White Snake Immortal some time ago, the number of humans entering the Langdi cave has increased significantly. However, a large part of them became food for the big snake in the cave. Of course, these big snakes naturally include the 3 immortals under the seat of the white snake immortal. Their cultivation is far inferior to that of the white snake immortal, and they still can't get rid of the habit of eating people, but they are much more noble than those ignorant things in the cave. They will not eat people casually, they have their own principles of eating people. According to the rules set by the white snake immortal, they will test the humans who come to learn immortal arts. If they pass, they will naturally be qualified to practice immortal arts. If they fail, they will be punished. The punishment is to become the food of the 3 of them. The white snake immortal rolled up his pipe with his tail, took a deep puff of smoke, and blew out a smoke ring. Then he slowly said, "The human who came in this time is very special, different from the others. He didn't come in from the maze passage." Xianxin Shenji was surprised. If he didn't go through the maze passage, how did he get into our Longdi cave? It clearly remembered that Longdi cave only had that one entrance and exit, and there were no other passages. The white snake immortal looked down at it and said in an admiring tone, "He hid in the mouth of the 10,000 snakes and then lifted the spiritual summons to enter here. In thousands of years, he is the first human to enter the Raichi cave in this way. Don't you think he is very interesting?" After saying that, the white snake immortal glanced at the 3 priestesses. 10,000 snakes. After hearing what it said, Suzuki-Heim on the other side was thoughtful and said, 10,000 snakes is the most powerful snake in this Raichi cave, second only to us. I remember that the only human who signed a spiritual contract with it was the guy named Orochimaru. He knows the location of the Raichi cave and doesn't need such a method to enter here. How could he do such a boring thing? The white snake immortal laughed and said, "That's why I said that the human who just entered the Raichi cave is very interesting." Huh. The 3 priestesses looked at each other, and the more they listened, the more confused they became. The white snake immortal continued, "Because the human who used the summoning technique to enter here was not Orochimaru at all. This means that it was the human who did not sign a summoning contract with the 10,000 snakes who summoned the 10,000 snakes. It also considered the possibility that Orochimaru summoned the 10,000 snakes and then sent that person in, but there was still the same problem. Orochimaru knew the location of the Raichi cave, so there was no need to do such a boring and complicated thing. Just tell that person the location of the Raichi cave, and everything will be solved. Therefore, it is more inclined to believe that that person summoned the 10,000 snakes." What? Hearing the words of the white snake immortal, the 3 priestesses were all shocked. Summoning technique belongs to the category of time and space techniques. The caster can use this ninjutsu to summon creatures from another space to help fight, but it must be connected with a summoning contract to ensure the success of the summoning. If the caster rashly summons without signing a contract with other creatures, various accidents will occur. The best case is that nothing happens. The worst case is that unknown monsters from another space are summoned, posing a great threat to the caster's safety. What's worse, because of the rash use of summoning, the space was broken, and it fell into the space crack, and there was no news from then on. Therefore, before signing a summoning contract, it has become common sense in the ninja world that summoning should not be abused. On the other hand, that human, without a summoning contract with the snake, not only summoned it, but also came to Longdi cave with the help of summoning. No matter how you look at it, it reveals a bit of weirdness. Summoning the snake can barely be said to be a coincidence. After all, without a summoning contract, these creatures in the other world are all randomly selected by the summoning. However, because of their respective strengths and weaknesses, there are differences in the difficulty of summoning. The 4 immortals, standing at the top of the entire ninja world, have never encountered the situation of being summoned by others accidentally, only occasionally heard that the other big snakes below have been summoned by others accidentally. If that person is strong enough, it is not impossible to summon the snake accidentally, but the other party actually entered Longdi cave by cancelling the summoning technique. This does not look like an accident. It is more like a premeditated plan. Then, the white snake immortal said to the 3 people, 10,000 snakes are chasing him. It would be a pity if such an interesting human died like this. You go and take a look. If you think he is good, give him a chance to participate in the assessment and see if he can come to me. Immortals have the pride and dignity of immortals. In normal times, the White Snake Immortal would never let the three witches under his seat condescend to give humans the opportunity to take the assessment. Only those humans who are thirsty for power will be able to overcome the obstacles of many big snakes and come to this temple, and then they will get the opportunity to take the entrance assessment. That is, today, it found that the human who broke into the Landi cave was not ordinary, so it had the idea of helping. As for whether the other party could pass the assessment of the three witches under its seat, it could not care about it. Everything can only be done once, not twice. Helping this time is the greatest kindness it has shown. Yes, Lord Whitesnake Immortal. The three witches agreed one after another, and then floated away. On the other side, Qishuang ran for his life. The snake was too powerful, and this was its home ground. If they fought, he would not be able to gain any advantage. Moreover, the snake's size was there, and its mountain-like body represented its vigorous vitality. Even if he tried his best, it would be difficult to cause fatal damage to it. Therefore, it was better to run away and avoid its sharp edge. Little devil, I must eat you alive today. The snake chased after him, roaring loudly. With the help of thermal induction, it firmly locked onto the vague figure in this dim cave. However, the boy was too cunning, circling around in this cave, and his body was petite. Even if he was faster than the other party, he could not catch him for a while. Chapter 307. After aiming at the heat source that was running not far away again, the 10,000 snakes coiled up and suddenly ejected. Feeling the huge wind pressure coming from behind, Qishuang turned his head and saw a figure as big as a small mountain pressing down. Without time to think too much, he rolled on the ground and immediately felt a huge shadow passing over his head. Boom. With a loud noise, the 10,000 snakes hit a stone pillar not far away and immediately broke it into several pieces. Not only that, its huge body also shook down a piece of stone cone on the top of the cave. Then, accompanied by a rumbling sound of collapse, the behemoth was suddenly submerged by the rubble and disappeared. God help me. Seeing this scene, Qishuang felt extremely relieved. The duration of momentary beauty was only enough for him to enter the Landi cave and escape from the snake's mouth. There was no time left to get rid of the 10,000 snakes, which led to the other party chasing him relentlessly. There was nothing he could do except run away. Now that Wansh had lost his grip, he finally had a chance to catch his breath. Then, he aimed at the narrowest passage around and went in. It was called the narrowest passage, but it was only for the size of Wansh. For Qishuang, the passage that was more than 3 meters high was not really small. Then he took out a stack of detonating talismans from the weapon scroll, quickly pasted them in the passage, and then activated the chakra. There was a loud bang, and he used the detonating talismans to shatter the rock wall, completely blocking the entrance to the passage. I hope this can delay it for a while. Looking at the blocked passage, Qishuang thought silently. With Wansh's thick skin and flesh, the falling rocks just now would definitely not hurt it, and it would probably not take long for it to get out again. As for the blocked passage in front of him, it was estimated that it would be difficult to stop the opponent. Taking a step back, even if Wansh really couldn't open this passage, it didn't mean that it couldn't catch up. After all, this is Landi Cave, the territory of the psychic snake tribe, and the snakes must be very familiar with the terrain. In addition, there are countless caves of all sizes around, and the transportation must be very developed. It is definitely not a problem for the snakes to catch up again by taking a detour. He must think of a foolproof way to completely get rid of the other party. At the same time, Xianxin Shenji and the other two who came to check on the order of the White Snake Immortal also found Qishuang. However, they did not show up immediately, but quietly hid aside, curiously looking at the boy who broke into Landi Cave. Although the breath is relatively weak, it is already good for his age. Ichijimaji used secret techniques to communicate with her two companions. He has good talent and a good brain. He knows to block the passage instead of blindly escaping. I think we can take him to test it. What do you think? Xianxin Shenji continued and looked at the brown-haired witch next to him. Tuan Jinji pinched her chin, looked at the boy not far away, and said slowly, "Let's observe for a while. He is not in any danger at the moment. We can observe him for a while to see if he is worth our exception. If, by chance, He can reach the depths of Langdi Cave with his own strength. We won't have to break the rules of Langdi Cave. The other two nodded and did not object. Although the White Snake Immortal was very optimistic about this boy, he did not explicitly ask them to take this boy to the depths of Langdi Cave for assessment. Therefore, they can hide aside and observe slowly before deciding whether to help. On the other side, Wanch was hit by the collapsed rubble and was dizzy. It took a long time for him to catch his breath. With a sweep of his thick tail, the rubble around him was immediately blown away. When it found that there was no heat energy reaction from the man around, it was almost furious. "Asshole, I will eat you alive." Fortunately, there was still a lot of the man's scent in the air, so it did not completely lose its target. Then, with the help of its snake tongue, it followed the scent and came to a collapsed passage. Seeing this scene, how could it not understand that the other party must have deliberately blocked the passage in an attempt to stop it from continuing to chase? After examining it for a few seconds, it immediately turned around and plunged into another passage. It was unknown how long it would take to open up the collapsed tunnel. It was not in the mood to do such a boring thing. Instead of doing this, it might as well change a new route to chase. It was very familiar with the terrain of this Langdi Cave. At the other end of the blocked passage, Qishuang thought to himself, snakes don't have very good vision, but their sense of smell is very sensitive, and they also have the instinct to detect heat. I have to weaken or eliminate the smell on my body, lower my body temperature, and suppress the heat reaction to get rid of that dangerous guy. Then, he found a low stone pit nearby, filled it with clean water using water escape, and jumped in to take a cold shower. Washing with water can greatly weaken the smell on the body. Not only that, he also took off all his clothes and took out a new set from the material scroll to change into. Perhaps I can use these clothes to create confusion and buy some more time. Looking at the old clothes he had changed, he thought silently. Then, he injected chakra into the puddle he had just used for a bath. Water escape water clone technique. Then, he saw two streams of water quickly surge up in the puddle, changing into a face that was exactly the same as his. Glancing at the old clothes on the ground, Qishuang said to the two clones, "I'm counting on you, guys. Don't worry, there won't be any problem." The two clones divided up all the old clothes on the ground and were about to turn around and leave. At this moment, Qishuang stopped them again. "Wait, I'll give you something else." As he said that, he took out another sealing scroll and took out the frozen heart of Orochimaru. "Just in case, every hour, if you don't encounter the 10,000 snakes, use the summoning technique to help me greet it." He thought Orochimaru's heart and reminded the two clones, "No problem. But our chakra is a little insufficient. You have to give us some more." One of the clones nodded and stretched out a hand. The more powerful the creature is to be summoned with the summoning technique, the more chakra is naturally consumed. With the strength of the 10,000 snakes, the clone's chakra is not enough. At the same time, the other clone also stretched out a hand after seeing it. "Chakra is just a small problem. Just don't let that guy bother me." Nanashiro held Orochimaru's heart with one hand and gently brushed the palms of the two clones with the other hand, transferring the chakra to them. "Okay, the chakra is given to you. Each of you take a part of Orochimaru's blood." As he said that, he held the unsealed heart in his other hand over. Chapter 308 Test. Yes. The two clones nodded, wrapped them with water attribute chakra, and took a bean-sized blood bead from Orochimaru's heart. They quickly transformed the chakra from water to ice, and froze the blood bead in an egg-sized ice ball. Now is not the time to use the psychic technique to summon the snakes, so they need to properly preserve Orochimaru's blood and wait for the right time. Nana Frost froze Orochimaru's heart again, sealed it in the scroll, and told the two clones, "The next thing is up to you. Don't worry, we will definitely let that stupid snake get familiar with the environment of the Ryochi cave." After that, the two clones went into two different caves and quickly disappeared from Nana Frost's perception. At the same time, the three Shins in Shenji hiding in the dark also discovered that he could use ice escape. Princess Tsutsu used a secret technique to communicate with the other two shrine maidens. The plan has changed. This kid knows ice escape ninjutsu, so he can't be treated as an ordinary person. The White Snake Immortal had previously ordered that as many humans as possible who knew Ice Escape ninjutsu should be guided to learn the Immortal technique. There were not many humans with bloodline limits, and even fewer who had specific Ice Escape ninjutsu. In recent days, they have only seen this one human who knows Ice Escape ninjutsu, so naturally they can't ignore him, like they do with the other humans who don't know Ice Escape ninjutsu. Then, should we take him directly to the test? Princess Ichikishima asked, turning back. Just as Princess Satsu was about to answer, a slightly old and hoarse voice interrupted. No, just follow him like this, and don't let him die in the hands of the other snakes. Hearing this familiar voice coming from somewhere, the three of them all looked solemn. Because, this was the voice of the White Snake Immortal. Then, White Snake Immortal, do we still need to set a test for him? Princess Xiangxin raised her head, and looked at the dark rock wall above her head and asked. Although the White Snake Immortal is not here, his powerful magic power can clearly grasp the situation of the entire Ryochi cave. Therefore, what they say here, the White Snake Immortal can hear from the depths of the Ryochi cave. After a long time, the voice of the White Snake Immortal came again from the dark. The rules of the test were set by me a long time ago. They cannot be broken at will. Let's proceed as usual. However, it is too rare to have a blood limit of Ice Escape to come to the Ryochi cave. So, even if he fails the test, you can't eat him. Let him come to me smoothly, and I will personally teach him the power of magic. As for whether he can learn it, it all depends on God's will. After waiting for a human with a blood limit of Ice Escape, the White Snake Immortal naturally didn't want to let him go so easily. It must teach the magic to the other party. It must let the human who can change the world be born. It really wants to see what expression the other party will have when the world deviates from the trajectory predicted by Todemaru. It really wants to see what kind of waves this human who can change the world will set off. It likes change. On the other side, after bidding farewell to the two clones, Qishuang transformed his chakra into icy air, soaking himself from head to toe to lower his body temperature. Then, in the thermal energy sensing of the three people, the powerful heat source fluctuations of the Ice Escape boy decayed at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the end, only a little bit of weak thermal energy image remained, which was more than 100 times weaker than before. If the other party was not still in their sight, they would not recognize that this was a human being based on thermal energy sensing alone. Instead, they would mistake this weak thermal energy sensing for a small animal like a rabbit. This kid has a lot of tricks. It seems that we don't need to worry about him at all. Xianxin Shinjiji sighed helplessly when she saw it. First, he washed with water to weaken his smell, then used his clone to take away the old clothes, to distract the attention of Wansh, and finally lowered his body temperature, to weaken the thermal energy sensing. With this set of means, it is really difficult for Wansh to find him again. Not only that, it also noticed that the boy took out a bloody heart and gave some blood to the two clones. Although it didn't know what the boy was planning, judging from the other party's previous series of deployments, it would definitely not be a useless move. That's the best. I don't want to take care of a weak human kid, Ichikishima Haim said lazily, while lying in the air, supporting her chin. At this moment, the Ice Escape boy who had just finished cooling looked over. Who is it? Who is there? The boy shouted loudly. Seeing this scene, Ichikishima Haim, who was lying lazily, sat up immediately. Did he find us? It asked the other two companions using a secret technique. I don't know. Xiangxin Shenji's face showed a solemn look, and she was also surprised in her heart. Princess Suzu raised her hand to signal the two to be quiet, and then used a secret technique to communicate. The concealment technique we use is a fairy technique, which is far superior to ordinary concealment techniques. Except for the blood limit of the Byakugan, even a sensory ninja cannot find our traces. He doesn't have the Byakugan, so he can't find us. At this time, the Ice Escape boy on the opposite side shouted again. I have already found you. There is no need to hide, just come out. Hearing this, Princess Ichikishima was surprised and said, did he really find us? Although it was very skeptical about this, it still did not forget to use secret techniques to cover up its voice, and did not expose its whereabouts. Princess Suzu said calmly, this is impossible. The power of fairy techniques is definitely not something that ordinary people can see through. Then how did he find us? Princess Xiangxin was also surprised. Tuan Jinji floated out slowly, motioning the other two to follow, and said, I heard that some gifted people have extremely sharp intuition and can find abnormalities that ordinary people cannot find. I think this kid must have used his intuition to find out that someone was spying on him, but he couldn't see us, so he spoke to try to trick us out. After saying that, it took its two companions and circled around to the back of Qishuang. At the same time, Tuan Jinji also confirmed its judgment. The ice escape boy was still staring at the place where they had just hidden, without moving at all. Obviously, the words just now were just a test for them. Beside the puddle, Qishuang frowned as he looked at the place where Tuan Jinji and the other two had just hidden without any movement. How could there be no movement? He was very puzzled. Long before taking a bath, he noticed that there were a few vague guys around him falling on him, but he secretly observed for a long time and still found nothing, so he spoke to test. Unfortunately, after just some attempts, no movement was found. Chapter 309 No trace. Forget it, maybe it's just my illusion. Shaking his head, Qishuang walked to the other side of the stone wall. At this moment, he didn't know that 3 snake immortals were floating on his right side, less than 2 meters away from him. This little bastard actually dared to cheat us. I really want to swallow him in one bite. Ichikishima princess waved her little fist and said angrily. Tsujinji smiled meaningfully and said, that won't work. Such an interesting little guy. I also want to see how far he can go. Then, in the surprised eyes of the 3, Qishuang attached chakra to his feet and climbed up along the stone wall. Not long after, he climbed to the top of the cave and used his feet to stick to the stone wall and hung upside down on it. He was going to go from above to the depths of Langqi Cave. Although he had tried his best to avoid the 10,000 snakes, this was the territory of the psychic snake clan after all. Once the 10,000 snakes couldn't find him, they would definitely order the snakes to search everywhere. If he walked on the ground, he would be easily discovered by other summoning snakes, but if he walked on the top of the cave, the possibility of him being discovered would be greatly reduced. Because this is a blind spot for ordinary people. Although ninjas have the ability to travel through mountains and rivers as if they were walking on flat ground, under normal circumstances, ninjas will walk on the ground. This is also the behavior of ordinary ground creatures. Few people would do such an unreasonable thing. Therefore, no one would have thought that he would leave the flat ground and walk on the rugged cave top instead. Then, he used chakra to absorb the rock wall on the top of the cave and slowly move deeper into the Langdi cave. Not long after, a rustling sound came from the depths of the passage. He immediately stopped and quietly hung upside down on the top of the cave, not even daring to breathe, because he sensed an extremely powerful breath rushing towards this side. As the rustling sound got closer and closer, a purple snake with a sharp horn on its head and black rings on its body appeared in his sight. 10,000 snakes came. Unfortunately, Wansh's attention was focused on the front, and he didn't notice that there was a person hanging on the top of the cave. His thermal sensor found a weak heat source on the top of the cave, but he guessed it was a bat or something like that. He was so focused on finding Qishuang that he didn't care about the little ant thing. So he didn't even raise his head and went straight to the direction where Qishuang had stopped earlier. The two just passed each other. When Wansh's figure disappeared into the passage, Qishuang breathed a sigh of relief. A stupid snake. After looking at the direction where Wansh disappeared and spitting fiercely, he continued to move deeper into the Langdi cave. Although he had never been here and didn't know the situation here, he knew in his heart that it was right to keep going deeper. The temple dedicated to the White Snake Immortal was either in the deepest part of Langdi Cave or in the center of Langdi Cave. The 3 Snake Immortals who followed him not far away couldn't help but frown after hearing the taunt of the Ice Escape Boy. What a stupid snake. Looking at the direction where the 10,000 snakes disappeared, Ichijimaheim cursed angrily. It was so stupid that it didn't notice the target right under its nose. It's a pity that it still calls itself the king of 10,000 snakes. Landidong has lost all its face. On the other side, the 10,000 snakes quickly found the place where Qishuang had stayed earlier, but it soon discovered that the other party's smell was roughly divided into two parts, each going in a different direction. After some thought, it randomly chose the direction of a smell and chased after it. It didn't believe that the little ghost was more familiar with the terrain of Langdedang than it was. Even if it chased the wrong one, it could easily find it again with its familiarity with the terrain, and was not afraid of the other party escaping. Following the smell all the way, it soon found the source of the smell at a fork in the road. It was a piece of clothing. In order to further confuse the 10,000 snakes, Qishuang's clone took away the old clothes and divided the clothes into several parts again and scattered them randomly in Langdedang. Arsehole. Seeing this scene, the 10,000 snakes finally realized that they had been fooled. It was so angry that it rolled around in the tunnel to vent its anger. With the sound of rumbling, the stone pillars in the passage that were as thick as 4 or 5 people hugged collapsed under its iron-like tail and were as fragile as tofu. After a long time, it finally calmed down. It found the piece of clothing fragment from the rubble again and thought to itself, that kid must have left more than this piece of clothing fragment. I can't handle it at all. Instead of letting me waste my time, I might as well ask the rest of the snakes to help find it. Thinking of this, it opened its mouth and sent out a signal sound wave to call the snakes. Soon, the psychic snakes within a radius of nearly 1,000 meters received the call of it, the king of all snakes, and followed the source of the sound wave and rushed over. It seems that the 10,000 snakes have discovered that I'm deliberately setting up a false formation and are ready to summon the snakes to search for my traces. Qishuang thought to himself as he looked at the psychic snakes swimming below from time to time. Although he could not hear the signal sound waves of the 10,000 snakes call, he still came to this conclusion through the abnormal snake movement. Because many psychic snakes were gathering in one direction. Apart from the call of the 10,000 snakes, he could not think of anything else. It was impossible that many psychic snakes were bored and wanted to have a chat meeting. Unfortunately, many psychic snakes passed by him, but none of them noticed his existence. Because they all swam over from the ground, and no snake chose to pass through the top of the cave. On the other side, many psychic snakes who followed the order quickly surrounded the 10,000 snakes. However, there were still many big snakes who still slept in their nests after hearing its call, and ignored it at all. Although the 10,000 snakes were powerful, it was still not possible to order them casually. Master 10,000 snakes, do you have any instructions for calling us? A psychic snake asked the purple snake in the center. The 10,000 snakes glanced at the other snakes and said slowly, a human boy has entered the Landi cave. I want you to help me find him. As it spoke, it carefully picked up a piece of clothing from the side with the tip of its tail and continued, this is his piece of clothing. Remember his smell and find him. After hearing the order of the king of 10,000 snakes, many psychic snakes came forward, sniffed the smell of the clothing pieces deeply, and quickly disappeared into the passage to find their target. Not long after, with the advantage of numbers, many psychic snakes quickly found the many pieces of clothing thrown by Qishuang's clones. But unfortunately, they still did not find Qishuang's real body, and even his clones. However, in a sense, finding Qishuang's clone is more difficult than finding his real body. Because the clone does not have a real body, it is just a ball of pure chakra energy, so it does not have the biological smell of the body. In addition, the clone is deliberately hidden, so it would be strange if many psychic snakes could find it by following the smell. Chapter 310 Road Blockage. Looking at the many pieces of clothing that his subordinates found, Wansh's eyes were about to spit fire, but he had no choice but to suppress his unhappiness and continue to wait. On the other side, Qishuang moved slowly and firmly along the top of the cave. The 3 snake immortals hiding around were very surprised. This kid has been to Landi cave? Why don't I have any impression of him? Ichijima princess pinched her chin and asked her 2 companions. The ice escape boy seemed to know the terrain of Landi cave very well. No matter which fork in the road he came to, he could choose the direction without hesitation. The most surprising thing is that the other party has not made a wrong choice. Every choice is the right direction. Now, it is slowly approaching the depths of Landi cave. You know, many humans who come to Langdi Cave for the first time, even if they pass through the maze tunnel, will spend a long time in these crisscrossing passages before they can find the temple deep in Langdi Cave. Xianxin Shenji heard it and shook her head and said, I haven't seen him either. After that, it looked at the brown-haired priestess next to it. Princess Tsujin said slowly, I guess he must have obtained the terrain information of Langdi Cave from somewhere, or he has his own unique way of finding the way. So, he is so familiar with Langdi Cave. They didn't know that. Although Qishuang didn't know the terrain of Langdi Cave, he knew wind escape ninjutsu, and could keenly feel the airflow in the cave and judge the direction. Because, flowing air is wind. Whether the air in Langdi Cave flows from inside to outside, or from outside to inside, as long as he finds the direction of airflow, he will not get lost in this complex tunnel. Generally speaking, air flows from inside to outside, and only from outside to inside in a few cases. Therefore, he chose to go against the airflow. If he is lucky, he can directly reach the depths of Langdi Cave and the temple dedicated to the White Snake Immortal. If he is unlucky, he will walk all the way to the exit of Langdi Cave. An hour passed quickly. Qishuang stopped, looked in the direction where Wansh left earlier, and showed a smug smile. Because, until now, he has not received any feedback from the clone after it dissipated. This also means that the clone was not found by Wansh. Another backup plan he had arranged earlier was about to be launched. At the same time, the clone hidden in a tunnel took out a frozen blood bead, and after unfreezing it, smeared the blood on his palm. He and the other clone had agreed on the order in which they would use the summoning technique, and he was the first one. Then, he accumulated all the chakra in his body, quickly formed a set of hand seals, and then pressed his palm on the ground. Summoning technique. Wansh, who was anxious because he couldn't find the hateful little ghost, suddenly felt a summoning force, and then was pulled into the void without any defense. In front of Qishuang's clone, with the smoke rising, a huge figure loomed in the smoke. Master Wansh, we meet again. What do you think of my game of hide and seek? He said with interest to the purple snake that appeared in the smoke. Don't let me catch you, or I'll make you die, ugly little devil. Wansh lowered his head, staring at the slightly illusory figure in front of him, and said with gritted teeth, it has seen that this is just a clone that has run out of chakra and is about to dissipate. No matter how hysterical it is, it will only make people laugh. Therefore, it held back its anger and did not take action directly. Let's wait until you catch me. Before the voice fell, Qishuang's clone had completely dissipated into the air. At the same time, his original body also received all the memories fed back by the clone after it dissipated. He learned that the clone successfully summoned Wansh and played with it. On the other hand, looking at the dissipated clone, Wansh's emotions gradually calmed down. It has realized that under the current circumstances, it is difficult to find the hateful little devil again. It must find another way. That guy definitely didn't come to Langdi Cave for fun. I guess he came to learn magic from the White Snake Immortal. I don't need to look for him everywhere. I just need to block his way to the White Snake Immortal Temple, and I can catch him. Yes, let's do it. After thinking it over, Wansh redrafted the capture plan, and then quickly summoned all the snakes to rush to the depths of Langdi Cave. Qishuang, who was slowly moving forward, soon found that many spiritual snakes were moving again. They were rushing to the same direction. And that direction was exactly the direction he was moving in the reverse direction of the air. Could it be that Wansh rushed to block my way in advance? After some thought, Qishuang came to this conclusion. High-level spiritual beasts like Wansh, in addition to having certain differences in nature from humans, have thinking abilities that are no less than ordinary people. It is not uncommon to be able to guess his purpose and then intercept him halfway. It seems that I have to prepare again. With this thought in mind, he remained upside down, resting on the top of the cave while refining chakra. He had divided a lot of chakra between the two clones earlier, and he had not had time to recover. Now, guessing that thousands of snakes were blocking the road, he had to keep himself in the best condition. After restoring all the chakra, he set off again, moving against the flow of air. At the same time, he also noticed a special fishy smell in the air. Moreover, the further he walked, the stronger the fishy smell became. He then smelled it. It was the unique fishy smell of snakes. I think we should be close to our destination. After walking forward for a while, at the end of the passage, a huge and open cave appeared in front of him. Not only that, in the center of the cave, there stood a gloomy but magnificent temple. Even from a long distance, he could still clearly see that on the plaque hanging in front of the temple, there were 3 large gilded characters, Dragon Earth Cave. Without thinking, he knew that he had found the location of the White Snake Immortal. However, outside the passage, there were a dazzling array of psychic snakes of all sizes. Perhaps because they were afraid of the White Snake Immortal, they did not dare to approach the temple, but were only distributed in the area 100 meters outside the temple, staring closely at the exit of the passage. Seeing this, Qishuang couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, because this meant that, as long as he stepped into the area of 100 meters around the temple, he should be temporarily safe. But he also knew very well in his heart that, because of the huge drop between the top of the cave and the ground outside the passage, as long as he took half a step out of the passage, he would be completely exposed to the vision of the snakes. He must break through the snake blockade in a very short time, otherwise he would be besieged by thousands of psychic snakes. In the temple, the White Snake Immortal coiled on the stone bed and looked ahead. His eyes seemed to penetrate the temple, and murmured, "Now, what will you do, kid?" If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 311 playing. Except for Wanch, the rest of the snakes are just a piece of cake. Hidden in the passage, Qishuang looked outside and thought secretly, because he saw that in the open cave outside, except for the huge Wanch, there was no other snake of similar size. Although many big snakes are much larger than ordinary snakes, most of them are only about 10 meters long. There is not a single monster like Wanch that is more than 50 meters long. Of course, this does not mean that there are no big snakes of this size in Longdi Cave except Wanch. But even if the strength of a big snake of this size is not as good as that of Wanch, it will not be much worse. Although Wanch holds the title of the leader of the Psychic Snake Clan, it is absolutely impossible to easily command them like commanding those little snakes. Therefore, the Psychic Snake Clan that can really be ordered around by Wanch are only these little guys whose size is far less than that of Wanch. For ordinary psychic beasts, size is proportional to strength. There are not many beings like the Fukasaku couple in Miyaboki Mountain who are small in size but extremely powerful. Therefore, judging from the size of the summoned snakes outside, except for the 10,000 snakes, the other snakes can never pose a threat to him in a one-on-one fight. It's just that there are too many of them. Once he is entangled and can't get away, he can only die in the end. Suddenly, Qishuang's eyes lit up, and he said with joy, "By the way, don't I still have one clone left?" He had separated 2 clones earlier and asked them to use summoning magic to summon the 10,000 snakes to buy time for himself. Now, he only received the memory feedback of 1 clone, and the other clone was obviously safe and sound. And nearly 40 minutes have passed since the first clone summoned the 10,000 snakes. That is to say, there are still more than 10 minutes before his second clone will use summoning magic to summon the 10,000 snakes. At that time, the 10,000 snakes, the biggest threat, will temporarily leave here. He can take advantage of the gap when the 10,000 snakes are summoned away to forcibly break through the blockade of the snakes and reach the temple in the central area. At the same time, Princess Suzu, who was hiding on the side, reminded her 2 companions, "Watch out, the most dangerous moment has arrived. We have finally waited for such a nice release Kekkei Genkei user, so don't let him die here." Princess Ichikishima waved her hand nonchalantly and said, "Don't worry, with the 3 of us here, this kid won't die." Princess Xiangxinshan thought for a moment and whispered, "Leave the 10,000 snakes to me." Among the group of snakes blocking the road, the 10,000 snakes are undoubtedly the biggest threat. As long as the 10,000 snakes are kept under control, the danger to this ice release boy will be greatly reduced. Hidden in the tunnel, Qishuang waited patiently while closing his eyes to rest. 10 minutes passed quickly. Estimating that the time was up, he suddenly opened his eyes. At the same time, Qishuang's clone, who was hiding in a cave, took out a frozen blood bead from his pocket. Then, the ice layer on the surface of the blood bead slowly cracked, and his left hand slowly became stained with a layer of deep red. After completing a series of hand seals like flowing water, he accumulated chakra in the palm of his right hand, and then pressed it on the ground. Spiritual summoning technique. Far away on the other side, the 10,000 snakes guarding the White Snake Immortal Temple were nervously searching for the whereabouts of the hateful kid. They were afraid that the other party would take advantage of the opportunity and sneak past them. Unexpectedly, a summoning force suddenly came from the void, and their hearts suddenly trembled. Stinky boy, this uncle. The furious voice of the 10,000 snakes was still echoing in the air, and the huge body had disappeared in a white smoke. Seeing this scene, all the snakes around the temple were dumbfounded. And in the passage, the 3 witches hiding beside Qishuang were also stunned. The dignified king of 10,000 snakes was played around by a teenager. I'm afraid our worries are a bit redundant. Xianxin Shenji smiled bitterly and shook her head. Judging from the current situation, the boy must have prepared ways to deal with the other snakes. Princess Tsujin said expressionlessly, "Be careful, it's no big deal." Princess Ichikishima beside her was delighted and said with a smile, "I find that boy's getting more and more interesting. I really hope he doesn't die in the practice of immortal arts and can play with us for a while longer." At the same time, after checking this situation, the White Snake Immortal in the temple also nodded secretly and praised it very much. A boy who can find a way to deal with problems is always more worthy of admiration than a guy who can only blindly force his way through. On the other side, at the moment when the 10,000 snakes were summoned away by the clone, Qishuang immediately rushed out of the passage, and while forming a seal, he accumulated chakra. At the moment he rushed out of the passage, the many snakes guarding outside immediately discovered this strange boy. There is no doubt that it was the target that Master 10,000 snakes wanted them to intercept. Without any hesitation, many snakes rushed forward and immediately formed an overwhelming black tide, a tide composed of spiritual snakes, rolling towards Qishuang. Water style, water dragon bullet technique. After preparing, Qishuang injected chakra into his feet, and a blue water column surged from the ground behind him, turning into a 10-meter long water dragon. Then, under his control, the water dragon shook its head and tail, and stood in front of him, heading towards the overwhelming snake tide. At the moment, when the water dragon was about to come into contact with the snake tide, he changed his hand seals again, controlling the chakra reserved in the water dragon to further change. Ice style, ice sealing technique. In the blink of an eye, the blue water dragon turned into a cold, fang-bearing ice sculptured dragon. Boom. The dark snake tide collided with the white dragon, erupting with a deafening sound. The psychic snake that first came into contact with the ice dragon was crushed into meat in an instant. After all, Qishuang's ice was harder than their flesh and blood. But it was not the impact of the water dragon that crushed them into pieces, but the huge pressure from the overlapping companions behind them that crushed them on the ice dragon. The ice dragon was also broken by the impact of the snake tide, and its dragon claws were broken. Even its head was slowly shattered in the snake tide. In the end, only a piece of the ice dragon's body stubbornly penetrated the snake tide and broke through the blockade of the snakes. The snake tide did not stop because of the impact of the ice dragon and still rolled towards Qishuang. Ice escape ice wall. At the same time, Qishuang quickly mobilized chakra and created a very simple ice escape barrier in front of him. This move without any skills, just randomly creating a pile of ice to resist the opponent's attack, is as easy for him as eating and drinking water. Seeing this scene, Ichikishima, who was hiding on the side, exclaimed, "Is this kid scared silly? He actually wants to withstand the attack of the snake group." Tsujinheim frowned slightly and whispered, "Be ready to attack at any time. Don't let him die." Chapter 312 Shuttle. The dark snake tide came in the blink of an eye. Qishuang raised the corner of his mouth and pressed one hand on the ice wall in the surprised eyes of the 3 snake immortals. "Goodbye." Before he finished speaking, he was like a phantom without substance, and his figure flashed and merged into the ice wall. Boom. The snake tide smashed down the ice wall. With a cracking sound, the seemingly indestructible ice wall was completely crushed and the snake tide mixed with the flesh and blood of those spiritual snakes and turned into a watermelon salad. Of course, it was a salad that no one wanted to taste. At the same time, the 3 snake immortals who were about to rescue were surprised to find that the figure who had just merged into the broken ice was no longer there. The ice escape boy disappeared. Hurry up and find him, Tuan Jinji said to her 2 companions with a solemn face. Soon, Chiang's and Shenji found the figure of the boy again next to the ice dragon's body behind the snake tide. Look, he's behind it. It pointed at the snake tide and shouted. The other 2 snake immortals followed the guidance of Chiang's and Shenji and immediately saw a familiar figure running towards the temple not far away. Huh, you scared me. I thought this kid was torn to pieces. Ichijimaji breathed a sigh of relief and patted her chest. Although she didn't understand how the kid crossed the snake tide, she was very happy that the worst result did not happen. Since he has arrived here safely, we should also prepare for the assessment. After calling out to her 2 companions, Tsujinji immediately crossed the snake tide from above and floated towards the temple behind at a speed that seemed slow, but was actually fast. Then, Ichijimaji and Chiang's and Shenji followed immediately. As for the group of big snakes outside that were summoned by the 10,000 snakes, they didn't care about them. As long as these idiots didn't come to the temple dedicated to the white snake immortal to make trouble, it didn't matter what they did. Finally here, looking at the temple at the end of the stairs, Qishuang breathed a sigh of relief. He relied on the ice escape and instant body technique to shuttle through the ice wall dangerously, using the remains of the ice dragon as a foothold, and finally crossed the snake tide. The ice dragon sculpture earlier looked like an attack technique, but in fact it was to cover the foothold for his ice escape and shuttle technique. On the other side, the many big snakes that were fighting in a group, after crushing countless of their own kind below, realized that there was no shadow of the young man in the pile of broken ice. The young man had bypassed them and arrived at the temple behind them. What should we do? Looking at the figure under the stairs, a big snake asked the other person next to him. The young man was too close to the temple dedicated to the white snake immortal. They didn't dare to approach easily. Although the white snake immortal didn't care about worldly affairs, it didn't mean that they could act recklessly in front of the temple. You know, even the Lord of 10,000 Snakes was very afraid of the immortals, so how could they, a group of inferior guys, dare to go there and act wild? What else can we do? Go back to the nest and sleep. The other person shook his head and turned away quickly. Originally, they were only summoned by the fierce power of the 10,000 snakes, without any cohesion. Now that things have become like this, they have no way to change it, and they are too lazy to think of ways to change it. The situation has been determined. Even if the 10,000 snakes come back, they will just stare blankly. There is no need for them to stay here anymore. It is better to go back to their nests and take a nap. As some big snakes left, the rest of the big snakes also slowly wavered and disappeared one after another in this cave. In the end, only the blood and flesh and broken ice piles left on the ground were left. Seeing that all the big snakes around had retreated, Qishuang completely put down the big stone in his heart. Originally, he was a little worried that the might of the white snake immortal could not suppress these fierce guys. They would rush up and strangle him regardless of everything. Now it seems that such worries are a bit redundant. Then, looking at the temple at the end of the stairs, he slowly stepped onto the steps leading up. Just as he stepped onto the first step, torches suddenly lit up on the stone pillars on the left and right sides of the step. Then, he carefully took the second step and stepped onto the second step. Torches were lit on the stone pillars on both sides of the second step. And then, with each step he took, torches lit up on both sides. Soon, the nearly 1,000 steps were like 2 more crouching fire dragons. Just as Qishuang stepped onto the 333rd step, he suddenly felt a flash in front of his eyes, and then a dazzling light shone on his face, making him unable to open his eyes. He quickly covered his eyes and subconsciously dodged to the side, ready to deal with any unexpected events that might occur at any time. Unfortunately, he closed his eyes and scattered his chakra, but still did not sense any abnormalities around him. After about 7 or 8 seconds, he slowly opened his eyes and adapted to the sudden increase in light. At the same time, he found himself in a magnificent palace. The dazzling light was the light emitted by the crystal lamp on the dome, refracted by the colorful gems around. Even the floor under his feet was paved with colorful crystals, and many gemstones were inlaid on it. Just as he was about to take a closer look at this unknown place, a gentle voice came to his ear. "Welcome to Langdi Cave, young man." He looked closely and saw a pretty witch with long green hair and a crown on her head standing in the center of the hall under the interweaving of various lights. "Who are you?" Qishuang asked carefully while being on guard. In the stories of his previous life, Langdi Cave was very mysterious, so he didn't know much about it. Naturally, he didn't know this pretty witch in front of him at all. He didn't like this feeling of knowing nothing and being held in someone's hands. The green-haired witch smiled and said, "Young man, don't be nervous. I won't hurt you. Not only that, I will also give you a lot of treasures, wealth that you can't use up in your lifetime." Wealth? Qishuang was completely confused after hearing this. Although he didn't see any hostility from the other party, he didn't completely let down his guard. Because, in his chakra perception, he could not sense the other person's breath at all. He clearly saw the other person in front of him, but he could not sense it at all, as if this person did not exist at all. This is an extremely strange situation. You know, even if an ordinary person who can't refine chakra stands in front of him, he will definitely not have this kind of feeling of being there and not there. Yes, wealth. The green-haired witch nodded, pointed behind him and said, "You are the 1000th human to come to Langdi Cave. To commemorate this special number, I decided to give you a wealth that you can't use up in your lifetime." Hearing this, Qishuang turned his head and saw that the dark stone stairs behind him were gone, and instead, there was a pile of dazzling gold and silver treasures. The brilliance reflected by the treasures hurt his eyes. Chapter 313 Floor. "Who are you?" Covering the light of the treasure and retracting his gaze, Qishuang turned his head and looked at the white-clothed priestess solemnly and asked. The priestess covered half of her face with her sleeves, squinted her eyes and smiled. "I'm a maid serving the White Snake Immortal. My name is Shanzin Shenji. Can you tell me your name, young man?" "A maid serving the White Snake Immortal?" Qishuang looked at her carefully again and replied carefully, "My name is Qishuang, and I'm a ninja from the Hidden Mist Village." However, he still couldn't tell what the current state of this priestess was. "Qishuang? Very good, very good." Chiangxin Shenji nodded, then gestured to look behind him, and said with a smile, "Those are the treasures I gave you. You can find a way to take them out of Langdi Cave. With them, you will never worry about money in your life, and you can live a luxurious life. Enjoy all the happiness in the world." Qishuang smiled with disdain. He turned around and picked up a sapphire from the pile of treasures. While wiping it, he said, "Although the texture of this gem feels very real, after I hold it in my hand, my reason tells me that all this is fake. I'm under an illusion." Chiangxin Shenji still smiled politely. "How could it be fake? That's the accumulation of thousands of years in our Langdi Cave. You misunderstood us." Qishuang played with the sapphire in his hand, looked around and said, "Although I don't know what means you used, and I can't see through everything in front of me, but I can be sure that everything I see is fake." "Why?" Chiangxin Shenji asked in surprise. Qishuang raised the corner of her mouth and said sarcastically, "You are too impatient. Although your illusion is very real, I can't see any flaws at all. But I was just walking on the stone stairs, and I entered a different new world, after taking only one step. This change is too abrupt. Except for illusion, I can't think of anything that can make my senses suddenly have such a big cognitive change in everything around me." Xianzin Shenji covered her face and laughed secretly. "Then, can you tell which one is real? The stone stairs before, and the palace now? Maybe you were the first to be illusioned, and then I solved it." Hearing this, Qishuang fell silent immediately. Theoretically, if he had been illusioned before climbing the stairs, and the other party suddenly solved it, it would indeed achieve such an effect. But from the moment he entered Langdi Cave to the moment he climbed the stairs, he did not feel any abnormal changes in his 5 senses. It can be said that the possibility of him being the first to be illusioned is extremely small. Then, he looked up and said, "The fundamental principle of illusion is to change the opponent's 5 senses to create an illusion. But what is fake after all, and it can't become real. Without the person who is being manipulated, the illusion naturally cannot exist out of thin air. It only exists in the person's disordered 5 senses." Because of the obstruction of the 10,000 snakes, I can be sure that this is the temple where the white snake immortal is, and the stone stairs before naturally existed, before I arrived here. So, it is real, and relatively, everything in this palace is fake. Even the you that I see now may not be real. After saying that, he pinched his hands and shouted softly, "Remove." At this moment, he forcibly stopped the flow of chakra in his body and prepared to reorganize it. The so-called illusion is to disrupt the opponent's chakra flow and thus interfere with the five senses. But no matter how the opponent disrupts his chakra, as long as the person who is being manipulated temporarily stops the flow of chakra in his body, he can destroy the opponent's interference rhythm and achieve the purpose of breaking the opponent's illusion. Xianxin Shenji stood quietly, smiling as Qishuang tried to dissolve his illusion, without any intention of stopping him. Relief. After trying 3 times in a row, Qishuang found that the scene in front of him had not changed at all, and he was still in that magnificent palace. Seeing the boy's somewhat dejected look, Xianxin Shenji covered her mouth and smiled. "Well, I didn't lie to you, did I? Everything you see now is the truth." Qishuang looked at her deeply and said in a serious tone, "The illusion is invalid, not because it is real, but because your illusion is far beyond the scope of what I can dissolve. The method of dissolving the illusion is not wrong. The problem is that he has lost the actual control of the chakra in his body. He thought he stopped his chakra in his body, but in fact, he did not do this. The feeling of dissolving the illusion and stopping the control of chakra just now was also an illusion given by others. This is why he can't dissolve the illusion by himself. You know, with his current strength, to make him fall into such a deep illusion, he must have the ability of a shadow level. This is an operation that an opponent of the same level cannot do at all. In other words, the person who casts the illusion on him is definitely much stronger than him." Xianxin Shenji still smiled and said, "So many treasures are enough to make you the richest person in the world. Why don't you want to believe it is real? Look at them. Their dazzling brilliance is so real and beautiful. Are you really not tempted at all?" Qishuang sarcastically said, "Ninjas have martial arts that ordinary people can't reach. If I really want, I can have as many of these things as I want. Money is just a pile of sand and gravel that can be found everywhere to me. What's more, since I have determined that what I see in front of me is false, I will naturally not be interested in it. Don't waste your efforts." The opponent's illusion was very real, and there was no flaw at all, but the process of leading him into the illusion was too abrupt, which made him wary. So he determined that it was an illusion. Very good. Seeing that he was determined, Xianxin Shenji nodded, and then slowly dissipated in the palace like green smoke. And that magnificent palace, along with her disappearance, slowly became illusory. Finally, it was like a colorful bubble shining in the sun, completely bursting in the air. Qishuang then noticed that the crystal floor inlaid with gemstones under his feet had quietly disappeared, and he had returned to the dim stone steps, still climbing up. It's really an illusion. Thinking back to everything that had just happened, Qishuang couldn't help but feel a little scared. He didn't know the purpose of the caster's illusion on him, but he knew that once he believed it was true and acted according to the other party's guidance, the result would definitely be bad. Chapter 314 Encounter. Fortunately, the person who cast the illusion on him had no intention of killing him. Otherwise, the time he was under the illusion just now would have been enough for him to die several times. Then, he wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, and after calming down completely, he continued to climb up. In the temple, the white snake immortal blew smoke rings leisurely and said slowly, "Xianxin Shenji, you underestimated that boy too much. Even if your illusion made him unable to see any flaws, your method of leading him into the illusion was too crude. When you meet someone like him who is particularly vigilant, the moment you drag him into the illusion is your biggest flaw." Under the stone bed, the green-haired witch bowed her head and said, "White Snake Immortal is right. I underestimated him too much." Then, it's my turn next. Ichikishimaheim, with blue hair and a figure like a little girl, walked out happily. Tsujinheim said expressionlessly, "It's up to you. The 3 snake immortals are responsible for assessing humans who come to seek immortal arts. Each person will make a move once. There is no fixed order. There are 3 tests in total. The question that Shines and Shenji just asked is called money. If Qishuang can't resist the temptation and takes the treasures, it means that the test has failed. According to the usual practice, if Qishuang fails the test, he will definitely be eaten by Shines and Shenji without hesitation. But this time, the White Snake Immortal ordered to keep this ice release bloodline Genkei ninja. If he really fails, they will not do anything to him. However, humiliation is inevitable. Unfortunately, Shines and Shenji's move was too hasty, which aroused the other party's vigilance, and this question was not very meaningful. But in the end, the ice release boy still successfully passed the test. Then Master Whitesnake Immortal, I'll go now. Before the voice fell, the blue-haired little girl had disappeared in the hall. On the stone stairs, Qishuang walked up step by step. For some reason, he felt that there was an indescribable strangeness on the stone stairs. This strangeness did not refer to the torches lit on both sides of the stairs, but the stone stairs themselves. Out of respect or for the Whitesnake Immortal, he chose to walk up step by step instead of running straight up. Because he knew that this staircase of nearly 1,000 steps was definitely not for beauty, but for people to walk on. If someone disobeyed the rules and ran up arrogantly, who knows what would happen. Originally, with his physical fitness, it would not be difficult to climb even 10,000 steps, but he felt exhausted and weak in his limbs after climbing less than 500 steps on this stone staircase, which was really very strange. As he walked, he found that there seemed to be a black shadow on the stairs in front of him. After climbing nearly 100 more steps, with the help of the firelight on both sides, he could see that the black shadow was a person, a little girl with blue hair and gorgeous clothes. Before he could speak, the little girl with blue hair turned her head and asked in a low voice, "Who is there?" Qishuang did not answer, but took 2 more steps and rushed to the same step as the little girl. Only then did he realize that the little girl's eyes were dull, and she just instinctively followed the footsteps and looked towards where he was. This was a blind man. "Who is there?" the little girl asked again, as if she was a little scared, and there was a tremor in her voice. "Don't worry, I'm just a passerby here," Qishuang replied as gently as possible. Hearing this, the little girl seemed very happy, and she hurriedly asked, "Excuse me, are you going to the temple above to find the Whitesnake Immortal to learn immortal arts?" "Yes, that's right," Qishuang responded casually. Most of the people who came to Langdi Cave were looking for the Whitesnake Immortal to learn immortal arts, and he was one of them, so there was nothing to hide. "Then, may I ask if you know the ice escape ninjutsu?" the little girl asked carefully, with a hint of expectation on her face. Hearing ice escape, Qishuang immediately perked up. In the entire ninja world, there are not many people who can use ice escape, but they are not few either. Now, he just came here and ran into such a little girl who asked about ice escape. It was really a coincidence. He thought about it and replied softly, "I can't do it." "Really? That's really a pity." The little girl didn't hide the disappointment on her face. Seeing this, Qishuang couldn't help but feel curious. "Can you tell me why you are in this terrible place?" he asked in a low voice, fearing that he would scare this weak little girl. He was very curious about why such a blind little girl was guarding the stone stairs leading to the Whitesnake Immortal Temple, and why she was asking about ice escape. The little girl curled up on the stone stairs, staring blankly at the bottom, and slowly said, "I'm the princess of the Kingdom of Noon, waiting for my lost brother here." "Princess?" Qishuang couldn't help but look at her a few more times after hearing this. No wonder the clothes on her body didn't look like those of ordinary people. Then, he also noticed that the little girl said she was here to wait for someone. If you're looking for someone, shouldn't you mobilize your country's forces and search everywhere on the continent? Why did you come to Langdi Cave to look for someone? Qishuang said, narrowing his eyes. "We looked for someone, but we couldn't find him." The little girl's voice had a hint of crying. She sniffed and said, "Legend has it that the Whitesnake Immortal in Langdi Cave has unimaginable power and can help people realize all kinds of wishes. So, we came to Langdi Cave to seek the guidance of the Whitesnake Immortal. I hope to use the power of the Whitesnake Immortal to find my lost brother." "What did the Whitesnake Immortal say?" Qishuang asked hurriedly. He became more and more curious about the little girl's experience. As far as he knew, the big-toed immortal in Myaboki Mountain had a certain ability to predict. If this matter was asked in Myaboki Mountain, there might be a slight possibility. But he didn't know about the White Snake Immortal in Langdi Cave. The little girl continued. The White Snake Immortal said that there is no free lunch in the world. If you want to get it, you have to pay. We need to pay for it to help us. Then what did you give to the White Snake Immortal as a reward? Qishuang was excited to hear this. He swept the stone steps up with his sleeves and then slowly sat down. I gave all the people who protected me to come here to the White Snake Immortal. The little girl turned her head and looked at him straight. Although he knew that the other party was blind and could not see him, Qishuang still felt scared when he was stared at by those empty eyes. There was always an illusion that the other party was not blind. At the same time, he finally understood why, as a princess of a country, the little girl had no servants beside her. It turned out that they were given to the White Snake Immortal. As for what happened to those people, he didn't dare to think about it, nor did he want to think about it. Because snakes eat people. Chapter 315 Color. Then what? Did you get what you wanted? Qishuang asked quietly, avoiding the pair of empty and creepy eyes. The little girl sighed, staring at the stone steps below, and said in a daze. The White Snake Immortal said that I only need to wait here until a boy who can use ice release appears. He is the one I'm looking for. Hearing this, Qishuang's eyelids twitched involuntarily. What a coincidence. He just happened to have the ice release bloodline limit. As for whether this little girl has any relationship with him, he didn't know, but the fact that the White Snake Immortal mentioned the appearance of the ice release bloodline limiter already surprised him. Could it be that it also has the prophetic ability of the Great Toad Immortal? Qishuang couldn't help but guess secretly. He knew very little about the Dragon Earth Cave, and it was not impossible for the White Snake Immortal to also have this ability. Then, he asked the little girl curiously, don't you know your own brother? It was really strange that he needed to use the ice release bloodline limit to identify his brother's identity. You know, the one the little girl is looking for is her own brother. Shouldn't it be easy to recognize each other? The little girl nodded, hugged her knees, and sat on the steps, shrinking back, and said softly, I really don't know my brother. I only heard about my father's existence by accident. Oh. Qishuang was very surprised. The little girl continued, my father told me that he had a brother who ran away from home, and that was my uncle. Now, my father is critically ill, and the throne of the Kingdom of Noon urgently needs an heir. But I can't see, and I have no other brothers and sisters, so the responsibility of taking on the throne naturally falls on my uncle who I have never met. However, my father sent people to inquire, and my uncle had long disappeared. Later, I heard that my uncle had another heir, and that was my brother. So, we put our hopes on him again. Unfortunately, we searched for a long time and still couldn't find that brother. It just so happened that our royal family knew the entrance to the Langdi Cave, so I went in here without my father's knowledge, under the protection of many ninjas and samurai, hoping to find my brother with the help of the White Snake Immortal. Qishuang was amazed when she heard this. It turned out that this seemingly willful little girl came here not for fun, but to continue the future of the kingdom. But, there are at least 8,000 people who can perform ice escape ninjutsu in the world, and you can't see it, so how can you tell who your brother is? Qishuang leaned closer to the little girl, and continued to ask with interest. The little girl turned around, stared at him and said, the White Snake Immortal told me that there are 2 black moles between the big toes of your brother's right foot. As long as you confirm this feature, you can tell your brother's identity. Being stared at by her made Qishuang feel creepy. He didn't dare to look at the empty eyes again, and subconsciously cast his eyes on his right foot. He didn't see that the moment he shifted his gaze, a meaningful smile flashed across the little girl's face. The footwear in the ninja world is very interesting. Almost all of them are the kind that expose the toes, a bit like the sandals worn in the summer in the previous life. Therefore, even if Qishuang didn't take off his shoes, he could clearly see his toes. Facing the firelight on both sides of the stone stairs, Qishuang slowly opened his big toes and saw 2 small black moles between the toes. It can't be such a coincidence. He suddenly felt a little toothache. Such a subtle and remote feature. Even the owner of this body was a little confused, and he didn't remember whether he had these two black moles before. But the features of Ice Escape and black moles all matched, which was a fact, and could not be refuted. He was very likely the person the little girl was looking for. As long as he opened his mouth to respond, he could easily obtain a throne and become the ruler of a country. However, he still had some doubts in his heart. Because, in such a dangerous place like Landy Cave, it was not normal for such a little girl to appear. Even if what the other party said was true, the little girl came here safely, after being protected by many guards. But the little girl had given the guards to the White Snake Immortal. Without the care of the guards, how could such a blind little girl survive here? Even if the White Snake Immortal ordered the snakes not to hurt her, what could she do alone? Qishuang didn't believe that the White Snake Immortal was a kind big snake who would take good care of such a little girl. Based on this point, the existence of this little girl itself was a little abnormal. He needed to test it again to confirm the truth of what the other party said. Thinking of this, he slowly turned his head, and after seeing the pair of empty eyes, he immediately had an idea in his mind. "Are your eyes born like this?" he asked softly. "Yes, it has been like this since I was born." The little girl's tone was a little depressed, and her pitiful appearance was really distressing. The doctor said that it can't be cured at all, so I must find Brother Wang. After a short period of depression, the little girl regained her spirits. It is hard to imagine how much courage it takes for such a little girl in her early teens to stay here so firmly. "Don't worry, God will definitely favor you." Qishuang gently comforted her and said casually, "By the way, I see you are wearing white clothes. Do you like white very much?" The little girl replied without thinking, "Yes, I like white very much. Actually, I think your blue hair is also very beautiful." Qishuang quietly pressed the kunai on her waist. "Really? Thank you so much." Before the little girl finished her words, Qishuang immediately slashed the kunai across her throat and cut her neck in an instant. She covered her neck with one hand in fear, fell on the stone steps, stared with empty eyes, pointed in the direction of Qishuang, wanted to say something but couldn't. Only the red blood was pouring out of her mouth, immediately dyeing half of her body red. At the same time, after cutting the other's throat, Qishuang immediately stepped back a few steps and sneered. "A born blind can also distinguish between white and blue. It's really a strange story. If the other party was blind later in life, it would be fine, but the other party was born blind, and there was no concept of color in his mind, so it was impossible to distinguish between blue and white. Of course, there is no such nonsense as liking white." He was originally suspicious of this little girl, so after hearing this, he chose to act without hesitation. Although he didn't know what the other party was planning, the other party was so deliberate to approach him, and he must have other intentions. Especially in this dragon cave, it is better to be careful. Chapter 316 Dissatisfaction. Hearing Qishuang's ridicule, the little girl loosened her grip on her neck, and the bleeding wound had disappeared quietly. Even the red clothes on her body were slowly fading, as if nothing had happened. "Very good, very good." The little girl looked at him hatefully, and then turned into a puff of white smoke, and disappeared on the steps. At the same time, he also noticed that the little girl's eyes were bright, and she was not blind at all. Everything before was indeed a disguise. His judgment was not wrong. When the white smoke dissipated, Qishuang breathed a sigh of relief. Just as he took his right foot and prepared to continue climbing up, his attention involuntarily fell on his exposed toes. How did she know that there was a mole between my toes? Qishuang's heart once again had a question. How could a stranger who had nothing to do with him know such a secret thing that he himself had not noticed? Then, he opened his big toe again. However, he saw that the two black moles that had just been there in the gap between his toes had disappeared without a trace. They were gone. How could this happen? He was shocked. Could it be that I was under an illusion again? Thinking of the previous experience, Qishuang couldn't help but guess. Things that grow on one's body naturally cannot disappear for no reason. It is very likely that they do not exist at all. The reason why he saw it was because someone cast an illusion on him, creating a visual illusion. Could it be that someone deliberately stopped me from climbing the stairs? After two strange encounters in a row, He had to start thinking about the purpose of the person who secretly cast an illusion on him. But why did she stop me? Until this time, he still didn't know who cast the illusion on him and what his motive was. Fortunately, the other party had no intention of killing him. Otherwise, the other party's ability to make him fall into an illusion without knowing it would be enough to kill him several times. In the temple, Ichikishimaji returned to the stone bed of the white snake immortal angrily. Just a little bit, and I'll succeed. It shouted with a face full of unwillingness. The little girl just now was it pretending to be? The test question it gave to Qishuang was family affection and royal power. As long as Qishuang believed it, she could find her long lost family affection and inherit a kingdom. Of course, these were all lies it made up. In order to gain sympathy and reduce Qishuang's vigilance, it even pretended to be a blind man. Unfortunately, it still failed at the last moment. The white snake immortal took a puff of cigarette and said slowly, "Everything you did was perfect. If it were an ordinary person, it would be almost impossible to see the flaws, and 9 out of 10 would be tricked. It's because that kid is too alert, so you will fail. But I'm very satisfied." Although the white snake immortal has decided that, whether the other party can pass the test of the 3 snake princesses under it, he will teach the other party the fairy art. But if the other party really fails the test, it always feels uncomfortable and unpleasant. Therefore, it was still expecting that Qishuang could really pass the assessment of the 3 snake princesses. It's up to Princess Tsujin next. I hope it can teach that kid a profound lesson. Xiangxin Shenji said indignantly. Compared with Princess Ichikishima who just failed, it was the one who lost the most. Princess Ichikishima was at least a little bit short, but it was seen through from the moment it made a move. It was really hard for it to calm down after losing face in front of the white snake immortal and the other 2 companions. Outside the temple, Princess Tsujin blocked the 10,000 snakes who hurried back in a passage. "Get out of the way, I'm going to eat the kid who teased me alive." 10,000 snakes roared loudly at the brown-haired witch with red eyes. After being teased twice by people using spiritualism, the anger of 10,000 snakes has accumulated to the peak. If it hadn't been a little bit concerned about Princess Tsujin, it would have directly crashed out of the passage without caring and went to deal with the hateful kid. Tuan Jinji stood quietly at the exit of the passage. Behind her was the huge cave where the temple dedicated to the white snake immortal was located. She said to the purple snake expressionlessly, "You didn't forget the order of the white snake immortal, did you?" "One snake." She called out the name of one snake word by word, revealing an unquestionable majesty in her tone. "What order?" One snake slapped the ground anxiously with his tail, suppressing his anger, and asked subconsciously. At this moment, he only thought about how to eat the little ghost alive, and the rest was not in his mind. Princess Tsutsuki still said with a straight face, "The master has issued an order that anyone who comes to the Ryochi cave must be guided to come to the master to learn the immortal arts. Not only did you not follow the master's order, but you chased after him and tried to kill the boy. This is already a contempt for the majesty of the white snake." Wanj said impatiently, "Isn't it just a mere ice release Kekkei Genkai? Can't you find another one from the outside world? Don't say one, you can find 10 or 100. Why do you have to protect that kid and make things difficult for me? There are not many ice release Kekkei Genkai, but it is not a problem to find 10 or 100 from the ninja world." Seeing that it still refused to bow its head, Princess Tsutsuki sneered, "Ignorant fool. Stubborn. Although there are indeed many ice release Kekkei Genkai in the ninja world, it is impossible for these non-human creatures to go to the human world to plunder at will. Otherwise, it would only cause human hostility towards Landi Cave and cause unnecessary trouble. In addition, several of them practiced immortal arts, comprehended nature, and followed nature. They knew that everything required fate and could not be forced. Otherwise, it would be counterproductive. Therefore, it was absolutely impossible for them to kidnap people and deliberately create that person. They could only increase the probability of that person's birth within a certain range, which was the limit of what they could do. Now, after finally waiting for a person with ice escape blood limit, the 10,000 snakes still clung to them and prepared to destroy their good deeds. It was really a heinous crime. It felt that it was necessary to teach the 10,000 snakes a lesson, so that they would not cause similar troubles to them in the future. Then, it quickly flipped its fingers and injected chakra into the soles of its feet. Immortal art, inorganic reincarnation. Seeing it take action, the 10,000 snakes felt that something was wrong and immediately turned around to flee to the other end of the passage. However, the range of the immortal art performed by Turpin Jinji covered the entire passage of nearly 100 meters. Although the snakes reacted quickly, they still couldn't escape the coverage of the magic. Sharp stalagmites suddenly grew on the rock walls around the passage, piercing the purple snake that was fleeing in panic in the passage. Tut, tut, tut. With a muffled sound of muscles being pierced, the snake's long body was pierced by countless large holes on the stalagmites, and it was nailed to the passage fiercely, unable to move. It turned its head with difficulty, looked at the white closed witch at the entrance of the passage, and said unwillingly, "I don't accept it. You have to hold it in." After saying this coldly, Tsujinji disappeared at the entrance of the passage. Chapter 317. Fellow. I refuse to accept. I refuse to accept. Wanch was nailed in the passage, roaring unwillingly, but the huge stalagmites on his body nailed him to the ground, and no matter how hard he struggled, it was in vain. It was meaningless, except to aggravate his wounds and increase his pain. Fortunately, Tuan Jinji had no intention of killing him and deliberately avoided his vital parts. Although his condition looked bad, he was actually only seriously injured. With his physique, it was not life-threatening. It was just that he could not get out of the predicament for a while. At the same time, he also truly realized that the order given by the White Snake Immortal this time was different from the past. If he continued to make trouble, several immortals would really kill him. On the other side, Qishuang climbed up the stairs step by step. After climbing nearly 900 steps, there was only the last step left in front of him. He let out a long sigh and exclaimed, "Finally here." Then, he lifted his leg and stepped onto the last step and walked completely through the long stone staircase behind him. The magnificent temple with the plaque of Langdi Cave was right in front of him. I hope the White Snake Immortal won't make things too difficult for me. Looking up at the huge gilded plaque, Qishuang shook his head and slowly walked towards the door. Pushing the door open, he seemed to have entered a new world. Inside, the lights were brilliant, and it was an extremely solemn hall with carved beams and painted rafters, magnificent and magnificent, completely different from the gloomy and terrifying scene that Qishuang had imagined. He couldn't help but be a little absent-minded, wondering if he had gone to the wrong place. Could it be that the White Snake Immortal, an inhuman being, also likes the exquisite life of humans? Such a thought suddenly popped up in his mind. "You shouldn't be here, young man." A cold female voice brought Qishuang's thoughts back to reality. He looked in the direction of the voice, but saw a pretty woman in a white witch costume and pink eyeshadow walking over. "You are?" Qishuang was about to ask, but saw the woman open her right hand to him. Feeling something was wrong, Qishuang quickly dodged to the side, ready to avoid possible attacks. Then, he saw several 2-meter-long snakes burst out from the other party's white sleeves and shot to him at lightning speed. Qishuang was ready to change direction to avoid again, but the snakes were faster than him and wrapped around him before he could change direction to avoid again. Boom. In just a moment, he was tied up by several snakes and fell to the ground. Without time to ask why the other party attacked him, Qishuang quickly mobilized chakra and performed ninjutsu. Ice release, ice sealing technique crack. Then, he saw bursts of cold air emanating from his body, and a layer of white ice condensed on his body surface and spread to all parts of his body. He performed the ice sealing technique on himself and froze himself. As for the several large snakes wrapped around his body, they were also penetrated by the cold air the moment the ice solidified, and were sealed in the ice with hideous faces. I don't know whether they are alive or dead. Seeing this, Tuan Jinji frowned slightly and was not in a very good mood. Although he had cultivated the immortal art, became an immortal, and began to evolve into a dragon, his snake nature was still more than his dragon nature. And snakes are afraid of cold, so they don't like the cold, especially those who can use ice escape. At the same time, after Qishuang froze himself, he immediately used ice escape instant body to escape from the ice, completely getting rid of the restraints of the large snakes. While guarding himself, he loudly questioned, "Who are you? Why did you suddenly attack me?" The chakra aura of the witch in front of him was intermittent, so he couldn't judge the strength of the other party. But judging from the move that the other party just made, it felt like she was stronger than him. In addition, this was the temple where the White Snake Immortal was, so he was a little taboo. If he offended the White Snake Immortal because of a fight and affected the other party's teaching of immortal arts, then he would lose more than he gained. Therefore, even if he was attacked inexplicably, he still did not dare to fight back rashly. At least, he had no intention of fighting with him for the time being. Tuan Jinji looked at him coldly and said expressionlessly, "It doesn't matter who I am. The important thing is that the White Snake Immortal has gone out for something temporarily and will not come back for a while, and I don't want the White Snake Immortal to see you, an eyesore, when he comes back. The immortal arts of Langdi Cave only need me to practice them. So, you must leave here quickly. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude." As he said that, it stretched out its left hand and made a throat-cutting gesture. Hearing this, Qishuang's eyelids jumped, and he thought to himself, could it be that I met a fellow practitioner who came here to practice immortal arts? Hearing from the other party's words, he heard that this was also a human who came to Langdi Cave to learn immortal arts. But this woman was narrow-minded, and she wanted to expel the other students of immortal arts. And he was in the expulsion range of the other party, so it was no wonder that she attacked him right away. However, he was determined to obtain the power of immortal arts, so how could he turn around and leave because of the threat of such an inexplicable woman? Then, he reached out and took out a kunai, took a defensive posture, and moved carefully while whispering, "If you want me to leave, it depends on how capable you are." Tsujinji showed a disdainful smile on her face and said coldly, "You will know how capable I am soon." As she said that, she gently stepped back, and the white figure slowly disappeared in the hall like drifting smoke. Seeing this, Qishuang's pupils shrank slightly, and her fingers flew, and she immediately formed a set of hand seals. Water style, mist hidden technique. He gathered chakra in his mouth, and after the nature of water was transformed, white thick mist continued to spew out of his mouth, immediately submerging the entire hall. Except for the vague orange lights, nothing could be seen. The woman's chakra aura was so vague that it was hard to figure out. After hiding her body, she could not sense anything. Qishuang himself was not a professional perception ninja, so it was impossible for him to find the other party's trace. In this case, no matter what kind of defense he made, it was difficult to guard against the other party's sneak attack. Therefore, he immediately chose to use the mist hidden technique to cover his whereabouts and avoid the other party's sneak attack. Not only that, this thick fog can not only cover his whereabouts, but also increase his perception ability. Because this thick fog is also an alternative perception field technique, any opponent covered by it will be completely exposed to the perception of the caster. Unless it is an extremely special concealment technique, any trick like invisibility cannot avoid the cover of the mist hidden technique. With this technique, he is fully confident to fight back against this inexplicable woman. At the same time, 5 slender white fingers quietly stretched out from the fog behind Qishuang and grabbed his neck directly. The third level of the test was completely rewritten by me, so if you find that some of the later parts may not match, please don't be surprised, because you are seeing the latest version. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 318 Crushing. Thick fog covered the entire hall. Qishuang, who was using it to search for the position of his opponent, felt a chill on his back for no reason. He instinctively dodged to the side, but he never expected that a cold hand would grab the back of his neck before he could dodge. How is it possible? Qishuang was shocked. This real physical touch finally made him understand that the opponent had avoided his fog and sneaked behind him. However, there were only a few techniques in the entire ninja world that could avoid the mist hidden technique. But he was so unlucky that he encountered it here. It was really depressing. How could he know that the stealth technique used by Mizukage was a fairy technique? Apart from fairy techniques, only the Byakugan of the Hyuga family could see through it, and ordinary perception-based methods were useless. Now, you should understand the gap between us. Accompanied by a cold female voice, Suzukage's figure appeared from the fog, pinched Qishuang's neck, and pressed him directly to the ground. At this time, Qishuang was shocked again, because the opponent's power was too strong. His legs seemed to bend involuntarily, as if they were out of control. He tried desperately to stop them from bending, but it was no use. His entire body leaned forward, and he was falling slowly and steadily. The opponent's strength was like the difference between an elephant and an ant compared to him. It was hard to imagine how such a weak and pretty woman could possess such terrifying strength. Could it be that she also has skills like super strength? As he fell to the ground, Qishuang couldn't help but think of this. Tsunade and Gobi-fan, two of the three ninjas, have super strength abilities, but the principles of their super strength are different. It seems that he must have encountered such an opponent. Even so, he had no intention of accepting his fate. As he fell to the ground, Qishuang quickly mobilized his chakra and formed a set of hand seals. Ice release, ice sealing technique. He applied his chakra to the surface of his body, preparing to freeze himself again, and hoping to take this opportunity to counter the opponent and turn the tide of the battle. I saw a wisp of cold air coming out of his body, and immediately a layer of white ice crystals appeared on his body surface, and spread all over his body at a very fast speed. In the blink of an eye, the ice crystal spread along the hand on the back of his neck to its owner. Seeing this, Tuajinji frowned slightly and said disdainfully, "You are trying to stop a chariot with a mantis arm. You are overestimating your own strength." Then I saw her gently shake, and immediately all the ice crystals that spread to her shoulders were shattered. She secretly added some strength to her hands, and pressed Qishuang's body to the ground at an accelerated speed. There was only a crisp sound, and the thick layer of ice crystals on Qishuang's body hit the ground and exploded immediately. How can it be so outrageous? At this moment, Qishuang's heart was extremely frightened. He specialized in ice escape, so the ice cubes he made were also harder than those made by ordinary ice escape ninjas. And his ice sealing technique was to maximize the restriction of the opponent, and the hardness of the ice cubes was exerted to the limit. It was the hardest ice he could make at present. According to his own estimation, once the opponent is frozen in the ice, unless he has the physical strength of the tailed beast, it is impossible for ordinary people to break out of the ice. But even such a hard ice was easily shattered. There is no doubt that the physical strength of this woman has definitely reached the level of the tailed beast. He couldn't help but secretly feel unlucky. He thought that the other party had mastered some special strange power, and even if the power was stronger than him, it was limited. Who knew that it was so strong, which was completely beyond his expectations. You know, one force can defeat 10 skills. This woman has such terrible power. Even if she doesn't need other moves, she is enough to stand at the top of the world. But there are not many such masters in the whole ninja world. Now he has met her in the Ryochi cave, and stood on the opposite side of him. It is really unlucky. If he had known that this woman was so ridiculously strong, he would have chosen to avoid her at the beginning, pretend to be friendly, and wait until the White Snake Immortal came back to make a decision. Unfortunately, knowing it earlier is worth a lot of money. Now, everything is too late. Dead. With a sigh from the bottom of his heart, after the ice on his body shattered, Qishuang saw the ground enlarged in front of his eyes, and then a violent impact fell on his head. His eyes went black, and he lost consciousness instantly. Looking at the ice escape boy with half of his head sunk into the ground and already unconscious, Tajinji loosened the fingers pinching the back of his neck, and slowly stood up. Then, he licked his red lips, and muttered to himself, "The interrogation game has begun, young man." When Qishuang regained consciousness again, and opened his eyes drowsily, he found that he had left the magnificent hall, and was tied to a stone pillar. His chakra was like stone, and could not be mobilized at all. He was completely controlled. "Why am I here?" He asked this question subconsciously. Then, he began to slowly recall everything before. I remember that I climbed the last step and walked into the temple, and then I met a woman who wanted to expel me, and then we had a fight. Recalling this, his hair stood on end and he broke out in a cold sweat. The nightmare appeared in his heart, and an unimaginable force shattered his strongest ice seal, and then knocked him out with one blow. Hoo-hoo, he gasped heavily, and said with joy and fear, I'm still alive. I'm still alive. I'm still alive. Ha ha ha. The joy of survival made him unable to control himself, and he couldn't help laughing out loud. He thought he was dead. Unexpectedly, the terrifying woman actually spared his life. Just as he was immersed in the joy of surviving a disaster, a cold voice came from behind him. You are still alive now, but you may not be later. Qishuang turned his head subconsciously, but saw the terrifying white-clothed witch standing not far behind him, staring at him with a playful look. Goo. The terrifying scene of being crushed reappeared in his mind, and he couldn't help swallowing his saliva. He was scared. Since he came to this world, he had never suffered such a setback, nor had he ever felt so weak. In front of this terrifying woman, he felt like an ant, and she could easily crush him to death with just a slight press of her finger. He was really scared to the extreme. Now, I'll give you one last chance. As long as you promise not to look for the white snake immortal again, I will let you leave safely. Tuan Jinji said slowly with a playful smile. Qishuang opened his mouth. He wanted to refuse, but the fear of death forced him to swallow the tough words. He was afraid of death, and he was even more afraid that his death would be meaningless. It would be unworthy to be killed by this woman, just for a moment of talking quickly. Chapter 319 Torture. Qishuang hesitated and said, I'm going to see the white snake immortal and seek the power of immortal arts. It shouldn't be a problem for you, right? You know, practicing immortal arts is a life and death struggle. If I die while practicing immortal arts, it won't have any effect on you at all. Why are you so aggressive? He tried his best to suppress the fear in his heart, and tried to persuade this terrifying woman to let him go. Immortal arts are the power he is determined to obtain. If he turned around and left in disgrace without even seeing the white snake immortal, he would really be unwilling. It seems you don't want to leave. Tuan Jinji licked her red lips and walked over slowly with a playful smile on her face. But in Qishuang's opinion, that smile was extremely dangerous, and he couldn't help but get goosebumps all over his body. Then, he hurriedly explained, no, I don't mean that. I just said that, if I stay here, it won't be a problem for you. Unfortunately, before he finished speaking, he heard a crisp sound of snapping, and a heart-wrenching pain came from the toes of his right foot. Ah, he screamed, and his originally handsome face became distorted because of the pain. When he looked down again, he saw a very beautiful foot with red nail polish pressing on his right toe. It was the foot of the terrifying woman in front of him. At the same time, he also vaguely saw a stream of red liquid flowing out from the sole of the other's foot, dyeing the surrounding ground red. Although he couldn't see what his toes looked like under the foot, he was sure that with the terrifying power of this woman, his toes were probably crushed into pieces with flesh and bones. Otherwise, he wouldn't feel such a stimulating pain. In any case, he didn't expect that he would meet such a guy who didn't play by the rules and directly tortured him. You. Qishuang gasped and looked straight at the woman in front of him, wanting to question why she didn't give him a chance to defend himself. Unfortunately, because of the injury on his foot, he was in so much pain that tears flowed, and he couldn't even utter a complete sentence. Tuan Jinji looked at him with contempt and sneered, you are not qualified to bargain with me. Either leave or die. Just now, this is just a warning. If you don't give me a clear answer, I will grind the rest of your toes into powder one by one. Qishuang couldn't imagine why such a beautiful woman could calmly say such terrifying words. What's more terrifying is that the other party has crushed one of his toes with her strange strength. Unfortunately, he was not the opponent of the other party. He couldn't escape, even if he wanted to, and could only let the other party do it. Helplessly, he had to grit his teeth, endure the severe pain, and try his best to maintain his sanity. He desperately encouraged himself in his heart, calm down, calm down, calm down. I will definitely find a way to get out of the predicament in front of me. Calm down, calm down, calm down. With the strength of this woman, as long as she is still here, he will never have the chance to see the white snake immortal. But if he leaves like this, he is really unwilling. Especially now, his toes have been broken by the other party. Although it is not a particularly serious injury, it will definitely have a certain negative impact on his body. He paid the price of disability and still failed to see the White Snake immortal. No matter how you look at it, this trip to Langdi Cave is a loss. Moreover, although he is afraid of death, he is not a bloodless person. In addition, he himself is not a good person. He has always been revengeful. If this woman had forced him to leave by other means, it would be fine, but using this torture method has aroused his ferocity. He didn't want to leave in such a disgrace, and he didn't want the other party to get what she wanted. Seeing that his face was distorted with pain, but there was still hesitation in his eyes, Tuan Jinji showed a playful smile, and then put some strength on his feet. However, this time, its target was Qishuang's other health eaters. After a crisp sound, a scream followed. The heart-wrenching pain came from the toes again, and Qishuang, who was thinking about a way out, was suddenly awakened. There was no doubt that the pain was similar to the one before, because another of his toes was crushed. Calm down, calm down, calm down. He clenched his teeth, trying his best not to make the kind of sound that would please his opponent, and comforted himself in his heart over and over again, so that he would not have a mental breakdown. At the same time, seeing that he showed an expression of pain again, Tuan Jinji smiled triumphantly and said, "My time is precious, and I don't have time to play with you here. Now, please tell me, do you want to leave or stay?" Staring at that pretty and ferocious face, Qishuang bit her lips tightly, even biting them until they bled, but she didn't realize it. He didn't dare to open his mouth, because there was a feeling of despair spreading in his heart. He was afraid that once he opened his mouth, he would involuntarily say timid words. However, he really didn't want to leave. But the courage in his heart had been tortured by the other party, and it could no longer support him to say strong enough words. He could only remain silent, and urged himself in his heart to think of a solution quickly. Calm down, calm down, calm down. His brain was working fast. He endured the severe pain, and began to analyze the whole incident. When I was unconscious, this woman could have killed me with one blow, but why did she go to so much trouble to torture and interrogate me? If she really just wanted to monopolize the immortal art, and didn't want others to have the opportunity to practice, she wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. Why? Suddenly, a flash of inspiration came to his mind, and he had an answer in his heart. It must be because of some reason that she can't kill me. Apart from this, there is no other explanation for why the other party didn't kill him directly. Then, he thought silently, is it because this is Langdi Cave? Because of the White Snake immortal, she can't kill me directly, so she can only force me to leave voluntarily? Yes, it must be like this. She must be concerned about the White Snake immortal, so she didn't kill him directly. Qishuang thought he had found the answer, and apart from this, he couldn't think of a more reasonable explanation than this. But even if my life is safe, if this woman tortures me and turns me into a cripple, what's the point? After finally getting rid of the fear of death, he started to worry again. Why is it me? Why am I so unlucky? I keep encountering so many strange things. The mental worries and physical pain made him complain and start to think wildly. Wait, one after another? Thinking of the strange things he had encountered before, he suddenly realized something. Chapter 320 Hypnosis. While climbing the stone steps, he was tricked by someone using magic twice in a row, and the probability that this time was also an illusion was very high, not impossible. At this time, the impatient Tuan Jinji urged again, "Hey, Kit, have you made up your mind? Leave or stay?" Qishuang came to his senses, endured the severe pain, and hurriedly said, "Give me a little more time, just give me 10 minutes. Just 10 minutes. 10 minutes is too much." Tuan Jinji frowned slightly, and then raised 3 fingers and said, 3 minutes, I will give you 3 minutes for the last time. After 3 minutes, if you are willing to give up, I will send you away. If you are not willing to give up, then I will have to kill you. As she said, she showed a playful smile on her face. Qishuang's heart couldn't help but skip a beat when she saw it. Then, she heard another crisp sound of snapping, and a familiar sharp pain came from her feet again. Sweat rolled down her forehead, and Qishuang could no longer bear it, and cried out in pain. This is the price of 3 minutes. Seeing his painful appearance, Tuan Jinji added with satisfaction. Hearing this, Qishuang did not bargain anymore, but bit his lips tightly and stopped screaming. He was afraid that this terrifying woman would give him another blow. Because this kind of pain was too terrible, even if he guessed that it was an illusion, he didn't want to experience it again. Then, he closed his eyes, forced down the pain from his feet, kept his mind stable, and continued his previous thinking. If everything I see now is also an illusion, then everything is fake. My being restrained is fake, my injuries are fake, and even this woman is fake. All of this only happened in my mental consciousness, and does not exist in reality at all. Then, I just need to prove that all of this is an illusion, and no matter what she does to me, it will be meaningless. Because it is fake. It is just fake after all. Illusions can only give me mental hints, making me mistakenly believe that this is real. Illusions cannot truly materialize these nothingnesses into my body. This is the essence of illusions, that can never be changed. But how can I prove that this is an illusion? Thinking of this, Qishuang opened her eyes, but saw that the terrifying woman was standing opposite her, looking at her with interest. There are only 2 minutes left. Tuan Jinji raised the corner of her mouth and raised 2 fingers. Hearing this, Qishuang clenched her teeth and closed her eyes again. There are partial and complete illusions. Partial illusions are like what happened to me the second time. The other party only created the illusion that there was a mole between my toes, but the stone staircase was still real. And the complete illusion completely shapes the entire world, just like the one I encountered the first time. In that illusion space, the treasure is fake, the woman is fake, even my body is fake, and only my self-consciousness is real. Then now, I just need to find the part that is most likely to be an illusion, and then distinguish it, and I can determine whether I have been hit by an illusion. Then, after some thinking, Qishuang locked the suspicious target on his feet. If he had been hit by an all-round illusion, then it goes without saying that the foot injury must be fake. But if he had only been hit by a partial illusion, then the most likely illusion effect would be his foot injury. Because the purpose of the illusion is to make the victim form a misjudgment and let him follow the will of the caster. To put it simply, that is to use illusions to have a certain impact on the victim and guide the other party to act. Therefore, the biggest difference between partial illusion and full illusion is that it discards almost all useless illusion effects and only leaves useful illusion effects. And now, he can find 3 situations that have the greatest impact on him. One is the chakra that cannot be used, the second is the bound body, the third is the crushed toes. Among these 3, the biggest problem is obviously his crushed toes. It can't be that the other party is so bored that he uses illusions to make him feel that he can't use chakra, restrict his movements, and then actually crush his toes, right? This is like throwing away watermelons to pick up sesame seeds. Illusions are used, but they are only used on trivial matters. The possibility is too low. Therefore, Qishuang judged that the most likely target of the other party's illusion on him is his feet. Then, he thought silently, if the foot injury is fake, then the pain I feel and the injuries I see are all the result of her illusion suggestion to me. In other words, after I was suggested the pain she simulated with illusion, I thought I was injured, so I imagined my toes to be disabled. Therefore, I only need to deny the injury just now in my subconscious mind and firmly believe that it is fake. Then my toes will be restored by my imagination because of the denial of injury. But the premise is that this is really just an illusion. If this is not an illusion, then my toes will not recover. Thinking of this, Qishuang couldn't help but feel a little scared. If this is not an illusion, then he will face the cruelest reality. If this is an illusion, then he will completely reverse the desperate situation. As the saying goes, 1 step to heaven, 1 step to hell. It's just like this. No matter what, I must bet on it. After a brief hesitation, Qishuang decided to test whether the illusion exists or not. Although he was only 50% sure, he still didn't intend to give up this gamble. Because if he didn't take this gamble, it would mean that he was completely out of the game and had no chance of using the magic. But if he took the gamble, although there was a possibility of failure, there was also a chance of a comeback. Then, he began to constantly hint to himself in his heart, subconsciously denying the fact that his toe was injured. This is fake. This is fake. This is fake. A lie told 1,000 times can also make people believe it is true. Therefore, what he had to do now was to hypnotize himself, hint to himself, and eliminate the fact that he thought he was injured in his subconscious mind. Once he denied the injury through lies and believed that it was fake, his imagination would change the impression of the injury and think that he was not injured. If his injury was really just an illusion, then this illusion would be rejected by the other party's suggestion by the subconscious because of self-hypnosis, so that the injured toe would recover. Time passed by minute, and Tsujinji, who was waiting on the side, pinched the time and said, "The time is up. Have you thought it through?" Qishuang, who was immersed in self-hypnosis, slowly raised her head and said coldly, "This is fake." Full of joy, but waiting for such a sentence, Tuan Jinji was a little confused, and it was so angry that it stepped hard on Qishuang's toes again. But this time, it didn't hear the pleasant screams as before. What it heard was just the repeated and cold words from Qishuang's mouth. "This is fake. This is fake. This is fake. Did I play you crazy?" Seeing this scene, Tuan Jinji was surprised. However, it found that there was a hint of mockery in Qishuang's eyes when he looked at her. Because just now, Qishuang found that his crushed toes gradually regained consciousness. Facts have proved that he won the bet. His foot injury was indeed an illusion. If it was objectively crushed by someone, his broken toes would not be able to regain consciousness. Only when the illusion is denied and the senses are corrected will this miracle of resurrection occur. Of course, Yang Dun is an exception. But he can't Yang Dun. So, it can only be an illusion that has been denied. At the same time, Tuan Jinji also found that the crushed toes had recovered, and she finally understood the meaning of the words that Qishuang kept repeating. That was the other party using self-hypnosis to deny its illusion suggestion. Although I can't completely solve your illusion, I already know it's fake. It's meaningless for you to do anything to me. I won't agree to let you leave Longdi Cave. Give up. Qishuang stopped self-hypnosis and said to him coldly. Seeing that the illusion was seen through, there was no point in torturing him anymore. Tuan Jinji looked at him deeply and then turned into a wisp of green smoke and disappeared in front of Qishuang. At the same time, Qishuang suddenly felt that the dark tunnel in front of him seemed to be burned by a fire, slowly burning from the edge to the inside and completely turned into ashes. Finally, he felt a flash in front of his eyes and he was back on the stone stairs in front of the temple. But one of his feet was on the last step and the other foot had not yet stepped up. It's great to be alive. He sighed sincerely. Everything just now was too real and too dangerous. If he hadn't proven that it was an illusion, he would have subconsciously believed that it was real. Once he died or collapsed in the illusion, his self-consciousness would also be dormant and he would become a vegetable. Living is no different from being dead. Fortunately, everything is over. Well, the test of the 3 snake princess is over. In fact, I personally feel that the second level should be the most difficult. The second level is like a willing bait. If you have a little idea, you can be easily deceived, and the result of being deceived is failure. The third level was originally a test of lust, but later because of the shielding, I changed it to a test of pain. Chapter 321 Final Meeting. Inside the temple, seeing Princess Satsu returning, Princess Tanshin and Princess Ichikishima immediately surrounded her. What was the result? Did you teach that kid a lesson? Princess Ichikishima asked hurriedly. Earlier, Princess Satsu had cast an illusion on Nanoshuang, making her completely trapped in the illusion world. They could only see Nanoshuang standing on the last step of the stone stairs, motionless. As for what the two had experienced in the illusion world, they had no idea. Forcibly suppressing her still difficult mood, Princess Satsu shook her head and said dryly, "No, that kid passed my test. It was also just a little bit away from success. Unfortunately, it still failed." Hearing this, Princess Tanshin sighed helplessly. After all, the 3 snake princesses still failed to regain their face from that kid. The white snake fairy coiled on the stone bed was not surprised by such a result. It set the rules of the test not to prevent humans from coming to learn fairy arts, but to screen out those mediocre people. Immortal arts are not so easy to learn. Without certain talents, mortals cannot learn them at all. Although its snake life is very long, it does not want to waste time on those mediocre people. Those humans who can pass the test of the 3 Shyangsin and goddesses are far superior to ordinary people in terms of perseverance and wisdom. Only such people are qualified to practice immortal arts. And the ice escape boy named Qishuang, from the unique way he arrived at the Longdi cave and the way he avoided the pursuit of the 10,000 snakes, it is enough to see that he is definitely not a mediocre person. Therefore, it is not impossible for him to pass the test of the 3 snake princesses under it. Moreover, the possibility is very high. It had said earlier that, even if the other party did not pass the test, it would still teach immortal arts, just in case. Now that the other party has really passed the test of the 3 snake princesses under its command, it can save it from reluctantly teaching immortal arts and annoying itself. Then, the white snake immortal saw the ice escape boy climb the last step through the huge immortal perception and slowly walk towards the gate of the temple. He's here. It bowed its head and greeted the 3 snake princesses who were still chattering. Then, the 3 white-clothed witches returned to the stone bed of the white snake immortal, stood quietly, and waited for the arrival of the guests. With his palm pressed on the red-painted temple door, feeling the real touch, Qishuang sighed. I hope this time it's not an illusion. The person who secretly cast an illusion on him was too strong, and he could trap himself in an illusion without any warning. In addition, the illusion was too real. After being disturbed by illusions one after another, he could no longer distinguish what was reality and what was an illusion. After sighing, he exerted a little force, and with a harsh creaking sound, the red-painted temple door was pushed open by him. A dark palace appeared in front of him. There were several stone pillars on both sides of the hall, and red flames burned on the stone pillars, which brought a little warmth to the dark palace, making it less scary. At the end of the flame, in the innermost part of the hall, there was a stone dragon with a scroll in its mouth. Under the dragon was a huge stone bed, on which a white phosphorus snake was coiled. He had long orange hair, a purple forehead protector inlaid with red night pearls, a green cat's eye stone on his chest, and a pipe in his mouth. He was looking at him curiously. There was no doubt that it was the white snake immortal of Longdi Cave. In addition, Qishuang also noticed that there were 3 white shadows next to the stone bed of the white snake immortal. However, compared with the huge body of the white snake immortal, which was like a small mountain, the 3 white shadows were really small. If it weren't for the white figures that looked a little abrupt in this dark hall, Qishuang would not have noticed them at all. After taking a closer look, he realized that they were 3 women. 3 women dressed in white witch costumes. Welcome to Longdi Cave, young man. A hoarse and old voice drew Qishuang's attention. He looked up and saw that it was the white snake immortal who was talking to him with a pipe in his mouth. Then, he hurried forward, knelt on one knee and said, "Meet the white snake immortal. You are a polite child. I like you." The white snake immortal nodded and was very satisfied. Those who can pass the test of the 3 snake immortals under him and come here are all people with extraordinary talents. However, most of these people are very arrogant and conceited, because they have the capital to be arrogant. In his more than 1,000 years of snake life, he has only seen a few people like Qishuang who are so humble and know how to greet. Therefore, his first impression of this young man is not bad. Then, he asked playfully, "But why didn't you kneel down on your other knee?" Qishuang raised his head, looked at the yellow pupils of the white phosphorus snake, and said seriously, "1 knee is enough to show my respect for you. 2 knees would only show my weakness." The white snake immortal nodded again after hearing this. Very good, very good." With an old laugh, a stream of white smoke rose from the stone bed. The huge body of the white phosphorus snake seemed real and illusory in the smoke, and finally disappeared completely. The huge stone bed, where the white phosphorus snake was coiled, also shrank countless times in an instant, becoming the size of a normal person's bed. An old woman with long orange hair and a white gown was sitting on it. Qishuang asked subconsciously when he saw it, "Is this an illusion? Or a transformation?" Because he never remembered that the psychic snakes in Longdi Cave had the ability to transform into humans. Even Wansh, one of the best snakes in Longdi Cave, did not have such an ability. He could not think of any other way for the white snake immortal to show this human form in front of him, except illusion or transformation. Beside the stone bed, Princess Ichikishima could no longer hold back after hearing this, and said indignantly, "Ignorant little brat. This is the incarnation of the immortal arts. When our psychic snake tribe mastered the immortal arts, we had the ability to transform into human form. This is our real human form, not something that can be compared to the fake illusions and transformation techniques." Qishuang looked in the direction of the voice, and then found that the one who spoke was the youngest looking shrine maiden. The shrine maiden who looked like a little girl. After a few careful glances, he found that the little shrine maiden was very similar to the little girl he met on the stone stairs before. Not only her, but the other two shrine maidens also looked very familiar. One of them was exactly the same as the shrine maiden who created the illusion, and said she would grant him wealth. The last one was very similar to the shrine maiden who entertained and seduced him earlier in the illusion temple. Seeing that he was hesitant to speak, Princess Ichikishima said bitterly, "Don't guess. The people who greeted you with illusions before were the three of us." Chapter 322 Immortal Technique, Part 1. Hearing this, Qishuang suddenly realized. Earlier, he had heard the first and third shrine maidens introduce themselves as maids under the seat of the White Snake Immortal. At that time, he thought that they were people who cast an illusion on him secretly and deliberately fabricated these women to fool him. It turned out that they were not completely fake, and their identities were real. Not only that, he also realized that the group of pretty shrine maidens he saw now were actually ferocious snakes. Because the White Immortal could not let a group of humans serve him. Then, the three snake princesses came out one by one and introduced themselves. "I'm Tsujinheim." The shrine maiden with long brown hair glared at him fiercely. "I'm Ichikishima." The shrine maiden who looked like a little girl said angrily, and she still had not forgotten the moment when Qishuang mercilessly killed her. "I'm Xiangxin Shenji." The last shrine maiden with long green hair also did not give him a good look. Qishuang felt a little guilty and showed a bit of awkward smile, so he had to avoid their almost cannibalistic eyes. Because before this, he was not very polite to the three snake princesses and offended them all. He even used a kunai to wipe the neck of Ichikishima. But he couldn't be blamed entirely, because who let the three snake princesses tease him inexplicably? Moreover, he didn't know that there were three other immortals besides the White Snake Immortal in Langchi Cave. If he had known this in advance, he would not have been so reckless before. At the same time, the White Snake Immortal lying on the stone bed also sat up. Seeing that Qishuang below was a little uneasy, he smiled and said, "Don't be afraid, young man. The three of them are just a little upset. They won't do anything to you. Otherwise, you won't have a chance to get to me." Hearing this, Qishuang finally put down his hanging heart. He also suddenly realized that if the three snake princesses wanted to kill him, in those three illusions, they were enough to kill him several times. But why do they want to? He was interrupted by the White Snake Immortal before he finished speaking. "Because that is the test I set for those who want to learn immortal arts." Test? Qishuang was stunned for a moment, then he came to his senses. It turned out that the three snake princesses were not bored and deliberately used illusions to tease him, but to test him in order to carry out the order of the White Snake Immortal. As far as the current situation is concerned, he has obviously successfully passed the test of the three of them. Otherwise, he would never have been able to meet the White Snake Immortal. He felt very fortunate for this. At this time, he did not know that, even if he did not pass the assessment of the three snake princesses, he could still be taught immortal arts by the White Snake Immortal because of his identity as a person with the ice release blood limit. "Young man, please tell me now, are you here to learn immortal arts?" The White Snake Immortal sat on the stone bed, squinting his eyes, and asked with a smile. "Yes." Qishuang nodded without hesitation. "I came here to learn the immortal arts of Langdi Cave. Please White Snake Immortal guide me to gain the power of immortal arts." Seeing his decisiveness, the White Snake Immortal nodded and said with relief, "Very good, very good. However, to practice immortal arts, you must first understand what immortal arts are. Now, please tell me what immortal arts are in your mind, young man." This is its routine before imparting immortal arts. Its purpose is to explore the degree of understanding of immortal arts by the learners, and then guide or correct them according to their actual situation. to increase their success rate in practicing immortal arts. Even so, in the long history of humans coming to Langdi Cave to practice immortal arts, only a few lucky people have truly practiced immortal arts. As for the rest, even if they passed the test of the 3 snake princesses under it, and obtained the qualification to practice immortal arts, they finally died in the process of practicing immortal arts. At the same time, the 3 snake princesses beside the stone bed also quietly pricked up their ears. They really wanted to hear what kind of answer this ice escape boy would give. Because immortal arts are difficult to practice, and practicing immortal arts requires opportunities. In the entire ninja world, there may not be a person who uses immortal arts for dozens or even hundreds of years. Therefore, the human beings in the ninja world have a very poor understanding of immortal arts. This also led to that every time the White Snake Immortal asked the students, they could hear a bunch of various answers. It also added a bit of fun to their long snake life. Qishuang moved his center of gravity back, sat directly on the floor, crossed his legs, and slowly said, "As far as I know, the so-called immortal arts is to introduce the natural energy of the outside world into the body, and then use chakra as a trigger to guide the spell. Because the natural energy of the outside world is everywhere and endless, the power of immortal arts has no upper limit. How much natural energy the caster can use, how strong the power of the immortal arts will be." Hearing this, the 3 snake princesses who were listening nearby were surprised, because what Qishuang said was exactly right. It seems that the other party had already conducted a thorough investigation of immortal arts before coming here. The White Snake Immortal nodded and continued to ask, "Then do you know what natural energy is?" Hearing this, the 3 snake princesses beside the stone bed showed a very solemn look. Because even as immortals, it is difficult for them to give a definite answer to this question. Even for them, it is not so much for the other humans who do not know immortal arts, and know very little about immortal arts. Therefore, among the past students, the White Snake Immortal rarely asked such a difficult question. Only those humans who were favored by the White Snake Immortal, and believed to be able to answer, would be asked this question. And in the memories of the 3 of them, every human who gave a serious answer, without exception, finally cultivated immortal arts. Because natural energy is the core of immortal arts, humans who understand what natural energy is naturally much easier than others in the process of cultivating immortal arts. What they lack is just an opportunity to be introduced to the door of immortal arts. As for those who don't know how to answer, or just perfunctorily, of course they know nothing about natural energy. These people were ignorant in the process of practicing immortal arts, and naturally they were far inferior to those humans who understood what natural energy was. To successfully practice immortal arts, it all depends on luck. Hearing the question from the White Snake Immortal, Qishuang thought for a while, then pointed to the top of his head, and then to his feet. The White Snake Immortal was a little surprised and asked curiously, "What do you mean?" Qishuang said slowly, "In my understanding, natural energy is not a simple energy, but is composed of many complex energies. For example, lightning, storms, earthquakes, tsunamis, etc. These natural disasters are all manifestations of natural energy. But no matter what form they take, in the final analysis, they all come from the sky and the ground." Hearing this, the 3 snake princesses were confused, but the White Snake Immortal became interested. Because this young man's understanding of natural energy has far exceeded the 3 snake princesses under him, and it is even possible that he has reached the same level as him. "Can you be more specific, young man?" It stared at Qishuang closely, and said with a little emotion, "I feel so annoyed, I'm afraid I'll have to die in the previous few chapters. I want to make a big change, but I feel like there are too many, and I can only blame myself for being too excited when I wrote it. I don't want to make a big change, but I'm afraid it will affect my full attendance this month. I'm torn. Just in case, I'll post one more chapter today. It's hard." Chapter 323 Immortal Technique, Part 2. Qishuang pointed to the top of his head, then to the ground, and said solemnly, "That is the sun and stars in the sky, and the lava hellfire underground." The 3 snake princesses looked confused, but the White Snake Fairy smiled and clapped his hands, nodded, and the wrinkles on his face were almost squeezed into a flower. "Very good, very good. Then, it said curiously, even after practicing the immortal art, it took me, the old toad in Miyaboko Mountain, and the old slug in the wet bone forest hundreds of years, to figure out the source of natural energy. And how did you know it? Humans have a very limited understanding of immortal arts, and even less knowledge of the core of this immortal art, natural energy. Even these immortals who have lived for more than 1,000 years took a long time to figure this out. Now, it was revealed by such a teenager, which really surprised it. Reverse. Qishuang slowly uttered a word and continued. After hearing that there is a power called immortal arts in the world, I conducted an investigation. So I learned that the essence of immortal arts is to control natural energy. He made up a source of information about immortal arts. The white snake immortal nodded slightly. Humans don't know much about immortal arts. The fundamental reason is that most of them don't know immortal arts, so they don't have the mind to explore. But in human history, there are always a few favored people who have obtained the power of immortal arts. The rest of the human beings also learned some information about immortal arts from these companions who mastered immortal arts and left written records. Therefore, although humans don't know much about immortal arts, they can still obtain information left by their predecessors through inquiries. Then, I learned about the ubiquitous characteristics of natural energy and tried to comprehend and practice it myself. Qishuang continued. Hearing this, the 3 snake princesses beside the stone bed all showed mockery. They have experienced the hard practice of immortal arts, so they naturally know how difficult it is to practice immortal arts. Especially the first step of perceiving natural energy. If there is no special physique that is close to nature, ordinary people simply cannot perceive natural energy. Without the guidance of the immortals, it is a complete joke for ordinary people to comprehend the immortal arts on their own. This is exactly the case. The ice escape boy finally came to their Langdi cave. This means that the other party failed to comprehend the immortal arts on his own. This kid overestimates his own abilities. The white snake immortal smiled and said, then, what did you get from it? It also foresaw the failure of the boy's self-cultivation of immortal arts. But unlike the 3 snake princesses who gloated over the misfortune, it believed that Qishuang must have gained some inspiration from this failed experience, which is why he explored the source of natural energy. Nanashan scratched his head and smiled awkwardly. I failed. I couldn't even sense the natural energy in the first step. So, I started to think that human chakra is a kind of energy, and natural energy is also a kind of energy. But why can I sense human chakra, but not natural energy? Ichikishimaheim next to him snorted. Natural energy and ordinary chakra energy are not at the same energy level. It's really rare for you, a human who has never seen natural energy, to be able to sense natural energy. The reason why fairy arts are stronger than ordinary ninjutsu is not only that natural energy is inexhaustible, but also that natural energy itself has a very high energy level. It is precisely because its energy level is higher than ordinary chakra that in terms of physical fitness, the same amount of natural energy consumed will be much stronger than ordinary chakra. This is also the fundamental reason why the 2 old toads in Miyaboko Mountain last time, whose size was far less than that of Manjutsu, were able to surpass Manjutsu in strength. Qishuang turned her head to look at it, and replied with a smile, yes, the 2 are not on the same energy level at all. It's like a bird flying at an altitude of 100 meters, but wants to breathe the air at an altitude of 1000 meters. It can't do it at all. Because 100 meters is its limit, it needs the help of others to fly to that altitude of 1000 meters. So, I understand. If I want to practice immortal arts, I must get the guidance of an immortal. The white snake immortal asked puzzledly. But, what does this have to do with your discovery of the source of natural energy? Of course it is related. Qishuang said firmly, after I realized that I couldn't comprehend the immortal arts by myself, I began to think about why there is a distinction between energy levels between natural energy and chakra. But I knew very little about natural energy at the beginning, and I could only start with my own chakra to find the answer. So, I began to explore the source of chakra. Hearing this, the white snake immortal widened his eyes slightly, and said a little nervously, what did you find? Regarding the origin of chakra, not many people in the entire ninja world know the truth, and it is one of them. But as a person who has experienced it, it does not want anyone to explore that dark history. because it clearly knows that the ancestor of chakra, the goddess of a rabbit, is still in the world. Once used by someone with ulterior motives, it will cause an irreversible disaster. Seeing the slightly nervous look of the white snake immortal, Qishuang immediately guessed what it was thinking, but what he wanted to talk about was not the sealed goddess of the rabbit. Instead, it was the truth about chakra that he had obtained by combining the energy cycle theory of his previous life. He said slowly, as we all know, chakra is a mixture of spiritual energy and human biological energy. After careful research, I found that spiritual energy exists only to manipulate human biological energy, just like the reins of a horse. And the changes in chakra and the use of ninjutsu are essentially the result of our use of spiritual power to manipulate biological energy, just like using reins to control a horse to gallop. If there is no rein, the horse still exists, but we can no longer control it. Therefore, the essence of chakra energy is actually human biological energy. Whether there is spiritual energy fusion or not will not affect its changes, but will only affect our control of it. Spiritual energy and biological energy can exist independently. Interesting. The white snake immortal applauded and laughed. It thought that this young man would mention the forbidden goddess. Unexpectedly, it heard another different statement. This is another most groundbreaking theory it has heard. Since the Six Paths Immortal explained the theory of chakra, it can't find a reason to refute it. After understanding the essence of chakra, I began to explore the source of human biological energy. Qishuang said, while taking out a food supply scroll from his pocket. After a series of seals, he pressed his palm, which was gathering chakra, on the scroll and shouted softly, "Release." As white smoke rose, a bunch of food appeared on the scroll, including oranges, apples, beef, pork, fish, etc. I think spiritual energy comes from the soul, but Naruto doesn't describe much about the soul, and there are many bugs in it, so I don't want to go into it too much. Chapter 324 Immortal Technique, Part 2. Look, that silly boy actually brought so much food with him. Seeing this, Princess Ichikishima quickly nudged her two companions with her elbow. It was the first time she saw someone carrying so many food supplies. Then, Princess Xiangxinshin and Princess Tsujin both raised their sleeves to cover half of their smiling faces. Qishuang saw this, rolled her eyes at them, and said tit for tat, "If you don't mind me roasting snake meat in this Longdi cave, I won't need these things." Hearing this, the three snake princesses all put away their smiles. Although they are immortals and have surpassed ordinary things, it does not mean that they can completely let go of their racial views. In this Longdi cave, big snakes eat small snakes, and they don't care, because this is the law of nature. But Qishuang, an outsider, dares to eat snake meat here, which is a taboo for them. "You dare!" The three snake princesses shouted at the same time, and then a layer of fine scales appeared on their smooth and pretty faces, and their charming eyes became fierce. The most terrifying thing was that the three bright red lips turned into bloody mouths that were cracked to the roots of the ears, with white and sharp fangs growing inside, and the forked snake tongue was sticking out unscrupulously. In an instant, the three charming and pretty witches turned into the hideous appearance of hell's hungry ghosts. Such a huge change immediately made Qishuang dumbfounded. Since he knew about the incarnation of the fairy art, he knew that these three witches were transformed from the fairy level snakes of Longdi Cave. But knowing this is knowing, before seeing their true form, Qishuang's impression of them was only the image of pretty witches. He couldn't imagine what such a pretty witch looked like, and he didn't want to imagine it. But now, the good impression left by the three snake princesses was completely broken. He was sure that no matter how much time had passed, he would never forget the ferocious faces of the half-human half-snake creatures he saw today. Even if the three snake princesses tempted him with their beauty, there would be no ripples in his heart, because he would clearly remember that these were three terrifying big snakes. Seeing Qishuang dumbfounded, the white snake immortal waved his hands to the three snake princesses next to him and said, "Okay, don't scare him." Then, Xianxin, Shenji and the others put away the terrifying faces of the half-human half-snake creatures, and turned back into the charming witches they were before. Qishuang finally breathed a sigh of relief. "Young man, what are you doing with all this food?" The white snake immortal looked at him and asked. Hearing this, Qishuang pointed at himself and said slowly, "The biological energy of a human body to put it simply, is physical strength. Walking will consume it, rock climbing will consume it, and even breathing will consume it. When the physical energy is consumed to a certain extent, we will feel tired and sleepy. And the way we replenish our physical energy is also very simple. As he spoke, he pointed to the various ingredients placed on the floor, and continued, just eat some food, digest and absorb them thoroughly, and our body will be able to obtain energy from them to replenish itself. Of course, you can also slowly recover your physical strength through rest. It's just that this kind of recovery does not obtain energy replenishment from the outside world, but consumes our own fat reserves. In the end, we are still consuming our own biological energy. So, the main way for us to replenish biological energy is to eat. The White Snake Immortal thought for a moment, and asked in confusion, according to what you said, the biological energy of a human body is taken from food from the outside world, and food is the ultimate source of chakra energy. No. Qishuang stretched out his index finger and shook it, slowly saying, human body's biological energy is not directly supplemented by external food, but it undergoes a layer of transformation by the human body itself, reducing the energy contained in external food, and then it is absorbed into the body. Energy reduction? The White Snake Immortal was very surprised. Although it was the first time he heard this new word, he barely understood its meaning. The energy in the food was reduced by one level when it was absorbed by the human body. At the same time, the three snake princesses who were listening also showed a thoughtful look. This young man talked eloquently, and it didn't seem like he was sensationalizing or talking nonsense. The contempt in his heart gradually faded away. On the other side, Qishuang nodded and pointed at the meat in front of him and said, I eat the meat of pigs and cows eat the stems and leaves of grass. The energy contained in the grass is transformed by the pigs and cows, and finally the pigs and cows are eaten by me. The energy of the grass is reduced layer by layer, and transferred to my body. But energy is not generated out of thin air, so where does the energy of grass come from? After saying this, the White Snake Immortal could no longer remain calm. His eyes, which were originally squinting, suddenly opened and burst out with a terrifying light. The three snake princesses next to him were even more stunned, and could not control themselves. Ordinary people may not understand where the energy of plants comes from, but as immortals, they know this. The energy of plants is directly taken from the natural energy of the outside world. Seeing the shocked expressions of the four immortals, Qishuang was very satisfied and continued, I can't sense the process of plants absorbing energy from the outside world to replenish themselves, but it doesn't mean that the energy they contain is generated out of thin air. Then this kind of energy absorbed by plants and trees, which I can't sense, is obviously natural energy. To be more specific, the sunlight energy absorbed by plants and trees is natural energy, so the light of other stars is also a kind of natural energy. Not only that, light energy is also a form of thermal energy. Qishuang pointed to the ground and continued, this means that the thermal energy of the molten lava in the center of the earth is also one of the natural energy components on this land. Therefore, the light from the sky and the underground lava are the main sources of natural energy. The reason why the level of chakra energy is not as good as natural energy is because it has undergone layers of transformation and reduction in the middle. It is precisely the transformation and reduction of energy that has caused the chakra energy to undergo fundamental changes, and ordinary people cannot directly feel the natural energy. From this, I got the answer that chakra energy is natural energy. What do you think of my insights, Lord White Snake Immortal? After saying this, he looked at the surprised old woman with a smug look on his face. The White Snake Immortal did not answer, but took out a pipe, lit it, and took a deep puff. After blowing out a big smoke ring, it looked at Qishuang and said solemnly, young man, you really surprised me, very surprised. Do you know that before the Six Paths Sage, there was no so-called chakra in this world, let alone so-called ninjutsu, only fairy arts. Fairy arts are the orthodoxy of this world and the most fundamental power of this world. But since the Six Paths Sage explained the principles of chakra, and because the power of chakra is easier to master, people gave up practicing difficult fairy arts, and turned to pursue simple ninjutsu. And because of the origin of the chakra ancestor, the power of chakra is not recognized by us sages. We have always believed that it is a power from outside the sky, a power that invades the world, and a power that should not be circulated on Earth. But today, your words made me realize that chakra power is actually a weakened version of fairy art power. Its existence is correct, and we should not reject it. I believe that the two old guys will be very pleased after hearing what you said. Isn't it interesting? Chapter 325, Once Upon a Time, Part 1. Are you talking about the one in Miyaboko Mountain and the one in Shikotsu Forest? White Snake Immortal? Qishuang said cautiously. The old woman held her pipe in her mouth, nodded, and sighed at the dark dome. If we had understood the relationship between ninjutsu and immortal arts earlier, we would not have been trembling with fear for nearly 1,000 years. Worried? Qishuang was a little confused. The White Snake Immortal glanced at him and said solemnly, "You have understood the common origin of ninjutsu and immortal arts, and eliminated the contradiction between immortal arts and ninjutsu for nearly 1,000 years. This immortal is in a good mood today, so I will tell you about the past." It looked at the dark dome with a look of reminiscence on its face, and said slowly, "You humans only know that there are 3 major immortal places in the world, but you don't know that the inheritance of immortal arts has gone through countless eras long before the emergence of humans." "What do you mean, sir?" Qishuang was still confused. The White Snake Immortal looked at him with interest and continued, "The immortal arts were born on Earth, and have gone through countless eras, even longer than the history of you humans. Do you really think that only our 3 immortal lands have inherited the immortal arts? But we have never heard of the existence of immortal arts outside the 3 major immortal lands." Qishuang had not finished speaking when he suddenly realized something and said solemnly, "Could it be that the other immortal lands were destroyed in the past?" Apart from being destroyed and disappearing, he could not think of any reason why the other immortal lands did not exist. Moreover, these immortal lands disappeared a long time ago. Otherwise, in the historical records of mankind, there would definitely not be only the 3 major inherited immortal lands today. Only time can erase the traces of their existence. The White Snake Immortal nodded and sighed. "Nature spirits like us already have extremely long lifespans. After practicing immortal arts, our lifespans will be further extended. But even we have a lifespan limit, and will die one day. So, the power of immortal arts needs to be passed down. However, immortal arts are difficult to practice. Even with the guidance of immortals, the younger generation may not be able to practice them." As it spoke, it glanced at the 3 snake princesses next to it. After hundreds of years of cultivation, there are only these 3 young immortals in its dragon cave. The Miyaboko Mountain is even worse. Except for Fukasa Kushima and his wife, there are no younger immortals below. Although the Fukasa Kutoad couple are much younger than it, they are each more than 800 years old, and have consumed more than half of their lifespans. In fact, they are no longer young. Then, the White Snake Immortal continued, "If we wait until the previous generation of immortals pass away, and there are still no new immortals among the younger generation, if the immortal land wants to give birth to another immortal, it can only rely on self-comprehension. You have tried to practice immortal arts on your own. You should understand how desperate it is. Without the guidance of immortals, the possibility of the inheritance of immortal arts being cut off is almost 100%. Now, the immortals of this generation of the White Snake Immortal are almost at their limit of lifespan. It is fortunate that it has cultivated 3 young immortals. If there are no accidents, the immortal arts inheritance of Langdi Cave will not have to worry about it for 1,000 years. Then what the adults mean is that the difficulty of inheriting immortal arts has finally caused the other immortal lands to disappear in history," Qishuang said, while sitting on the floor, pinching his chin. The White Snake Immortal nodded first, then shook his head, and sighed. "There are only 3 immortal lands left in the world today. In addition to the difficulty of inheriting immortal arts, there is another reason." "Another reason?" Qishuang frowned slightly. "It's a war." The White Snake Immortal exhaled a long breath and said slowly, "More than 1,000 years ago, there was a great war between immortals on Earth. After that war, all the immortals died, which led to the interruption of inheritance, leaving only the 3 major immortal lands. Is it a conflict between the immortals that caused a big melee?" Qishuang asked curiously. "No. The white snake immortal shook his head, his eyes deepened a little, and he sighed. It was a war between nearly 100 immortals and a woman. Qishuang's eyelids jumped, and the image of a woman with a red Magatama Samsara on her forehead appeared in his mind. That was the goddess of Mao, Kaguya Otsutsuki. At the same time, the 3 snake princesses beside the stone bed also showed surprised expressions. This was the history they had never heard the white snake immortal tell. Yes, just for a woman. The white snake immortal took a deep puff of his cigarette and said helplessly, nearly 100 immortals united to besiege a woman. A terrifying woman. Hearing this, the faces of the 3 snake princesses couldn't help but look a little ugly. Because, judging from the only 3 remaining immortal lands, the immortals should have lost that war. However, nearly 100 immortals joined forces to besiege, but still lost to a woman. They couldn't imagine how terrifying that woman was. But Lord White Snake Immortal, since that woman is so terrifying, why did so many immortals still attack her? Ichikishima Princess asked puzzledly. Immortals have extremely keen perception abilities. If they hadn't sensed the danger of that woman, many immortals would not have chosen to join forces to besiege. But this is where the problem lies. Since they knew the danger, why did they still go? The white snake immortal looked at the 3 of them deeply and said solemnly, this involves the foundation of us immortals. The power of immortals comes from nature, so we should obey nature. If the code of conduct goes against nature, the world will instinctively reject us, and the power of immortals will slowly weaken until it disappears. After saying that, it turned around and looked at the young man and said, obey the laws of nature. This is the basis for the survival of us immortals, and it is also the reason why the 3 major immortal places rarely move in the world. We just need to follow our own hearts and look at all things in the world with a normal mind. That's enough. On the contrary, all acts that destroy nature are also the objects of hostility from us immortals. Therefore, while immortals gain power from nature, they also derive the responsibility to protect nature. Qishuang was a little surprised when he heard this and asked in confusion, but when we were clearing the mountains and cutting down trees, we didn't see you come out to stop us. Clearing the mountains and cutting down trees is obviously an act of destroying nature. The white snake immortal said with a dark face, the world has a certain ability to regulate itself. Your human activities are also part of natural changes and have not harmed the world's foundation. We will only intervene if there are events that will seriously threaten the world. And the woman 1,000 years ago endangered the balance of the world in the survival of many immortals. Under the inspiration of the mysterious world, many immortals joined forces to besiege her. White Snake Immortal, get your stool ready. I'm going to tell a story. I fill in Kaguya's story as a supplement to the world view of the ninja world. Of course, it is definitely different from what everyone knows. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.